into the English language, because we know that there may be few students who cannot understand Sinhalese. So that is relatively unfair for the people who do not speak or understand Sinhalese when we explain the things. But still, considering the betterness of the majority of the students, we tend to explain the same things in Sinhalese. So anyway, even though we explain the things in Sinhalese, your assessments and everything is, and the lecture material and everything are going to be in English language, as you know. I think you have had so many subjects done before this one, so you know how the things are going on. So I will take my time to explain few things in Sinhalese as well. But if you do not want that, or if you're not comfortable with that, then just please let me know. Then I can stick myself to English explanations. So that is the first. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always unmute yourself and ask them. But I would rather use the chat in comparison to the microphone, because if you unmute yourself, that will kind of distract other students while during the lecture. So feel free to use the chat if you have any questions. Then I will address them then and there, or at the end of the lecture. So of course, I will give you time to ask questions at the end of the class, so that we can, if you have any queries, we can have time to discuss. Now, if I give you a brief introduction to the subject again, this subject is relatively different from what you have learned probably in other subjects, because we are here talking about some policy aspects related to the agriculture as well as to the plantation sector in Sri Lanka. So I assume that you have a fairly good knowledge about the agriculture sector and the plantation sector by now. Subjects course I think this is one of the very last subjects, right? Courses can subjects majority anyway, so I think you have, at least the major plantation crops and where the things are growing, and how this small holding sector and plantation sector works. මම හිතනවා මේ වගේ පොඩි background details ටිකක් මේ වෙනකොට ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා ඇති කියලා. ලංකාවේ කෘෂිකාර්මික අංශය සහ ඒ වගේම ලංකාවේ මොනවාද වැවිලි කර්මාන්ත අංශය පිළිබඳවත් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ knowledge එකක් ඇති කියලා හිතනවා. තේ ඊළඟට rubber, ඊට පස්සේ the sugar cane වගේ crops ගැන මම හිතනවා ඔයාලා basics මේ වෙනකොට දන්නවා ඇති කියලා. So we are not going to talk about crop agronomy or physiology or anything. We are just talking about the policies that are related to the development of those relevant crop sectors. Okay. Right. So we'll start with the slides. Right. Now, as I said earlier, this subject is a 2-credit subject, and it has 4 intended learning outcomes, out of which first 2 has been done in the first section of this subject, that is under the economic indicators and things. And then I'm not really aware what the first section covers, but I know it gives you a basic understanding of how to calculate GDP and population dynamics of the country, and poverty indicators, socio-economic indicators. In this section, we are covering the 3rd and 4th intended learning outcomes of your curriculum, that are to describe by comparing and contrasting different types of plans, programs, projects, and strategies available to develop the plantation sector, as well as any recent trends, perspectives, and emerging challenges to identify avenues for policy innovations to agriculture, environment, food, and trade subsector. So we will be mainly focusing on these two intended learning outcomes, and mainly this section of your subject, this policy environment, we'll be talking two main policies in Sri Lanka. One is agriculture policy. අපි සිංහලෙන් කියන ජාතික කෘෂි කාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය කියලා. ඒ වගේම then we are going to talk about the plantation sector policy. Right? So those are the two policies that we are mainly paying attention here. So you will see the things are more or less similar when we are discussing agriculture as well as plantation sector policies. Is that correct? Okay, clear? So if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat. If you cannot hear me, just let me know via the chat or using the microphone. Right. Now, මෙතනට එන්න කලින් policy එකක් මොකක්ද කියන්නේ කියලා මම ඔයාලට කියලා දෙන්න කලින්, so we just discuss what is a policy. Do you know the Sinhalese term for policy? මගේ අතන දැන් ඉස්සරහටම කියවුණා policy කියන එක සිංහල වචනය දන්නවද ඔයගොල්ලෝ?
ප්‍රතිපත්ති.
ප්‍රතිපත්ති, exactly, good. ප්‍රතිපත්ති, very good. දැන් අපි ජාතික කෘෂි කාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය කියලා කියන්නේ national policy framework for agriculture. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි දන්නවා ඔය දැන් අතරම ප්‍රතිපත්ති කියන එක, when you say the term ප්‍රතිපත්ති or නැත්නම් policy කියලා කිව්වහම
principles.
Yes. These things are more or less attached to or go hand in hand with the government as well as different political parties or the decisions made by the political parties. Now, when you are going towards an election, especially when it is a presidential election, appointing a new government, this term policy or the term ප්‍රතිපත්ති නැත්නම් ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශය කියන එක අපිට අහන්න ලැබෙනවා ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ජනාධිපතිවරණයකට එහෙම නැත්නම් මහමැතිවරණයකට වගේ.
Insurance policy.
Yes, insurance, we do also have policies, yes. But in here we are mainly focusing on the policies that are applicable for a broader context, meant for a country as a whole. When it comes to an insurance policy, that is a different story because that again targeting for a single or a particular customer, and it insurance policy it gives you all the details related to what sort of an insurance that is going to be and things like that. But in the public policies, what we are talking here are applicable for countries or governments in general and to all the citizens or the civilians in that particular country or in that particular area. So as I was saying, when you talk about policies, these things we mainly come across during the presidential elections or general elections. So politicians, as a part of a representation, as we choose them as representatives of general public, and they are the people mainly who are responsible. I mean, I wouldn't say responsible for making policies, but they are, yes, they are the policymakers of any given country, the politicians are. So when a political party is trying to come to the power, they tend to release their policies, that what their plans are for the country. Then when Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa was competing for the presidency, he gave another ආසියාවේ ආශ්‍රවය කියලා තිබුණා ඊගාවට now when
Miracle of Asia.
Yes, Miracle of Asia, and when Mr. Maithripala Sirisena was competing.
Good governance.
Yes, good governance, and they had 100-day දිනසිය වැඩසටහන කියලා එකක් තිබුණා, 100-day program එකක් තිබුණා. So all these are considered as policies. So these are at before an election. Actually, these things are considered as more of political promises, I would say, rather than policies. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඔය අපි කියන දේශපාලන පොරොන්දු කියලා අපි කියන්නේ සමහර වෙලාවට අපි සිංහලෙන් කියන දේශපාලන පොරොන්දු කියලා. එතකොට මේ දේශපාලන පොරොන්දු තමයි once they have come to the power, they are promising the people to implement these things as policies so that they can bring that promised developments to the country and to the civilians of the country. So that's how the policies work, and actually this definitely has a taste of politics when we're talking, especially talking about the public policies, right? But there are other non-public or private policies, as you said, there are insurance policies, and also there are different company policies. Like when you're in a university, the university again has some separate principles and policies, and different companies, they do have their own policies. And එක එක ආයතන, එක එක විශ්වවිද්‍යාල, එක එක
associations,
yes, can have different policies for themselves. Right? Those are not public policies; those are just governing information for the respective institution. Right? But in this case, we are mainly focusing on the public policies. Okay. Right. Now, policies can be defined as fundamental written statements which are meant to guide the thinking and action in decision making of the managers. So what you can see more specifically here is that policies are, of course, written documents. So if it is a policy, if it is to be considered as a policy, then it has to be written down. That is why when politicians or political parties or any companies, they are implementing policies, they definitely have a booklet or a report or a guideline. Likewise, the policy has to be written down and it has to be approved by the senior management or by the parliament, members of the parliament. Or it is a well approved and well recognized document by any government or by any organization. So it guides the thinking and the action of the decision making of the managers. So we are referring here to the managers, assuming that these can be organizational policies, institutional policies, and things like that. But if you are considering the entire country or the government, so the managers are going to be the members of the parliament or the president and the prime minister and the other members of the government, right? So their decision-making patterns are based on the policies that are laid by the government. So a public policy is an action which employs governmental authority to commit resources to support a preferred value. Now, as I said earlier, the policies can be governmental or public, and also there can be institutional and organizational policies also are there, right? So our focus mainly here on the public policies, actions in which employs governmental authority. So the government gets an authority to implement these policies in order to deliver a support to the specific respondent group that has been identified by the policy. So we will see what are the specific respondent groups that can be benefited through the policies. Now, before going on to that one, we are just going to talk a little tiny bit about different classifications of policies. So different authors, different books classify these policies in different ways. So there are no exact ways of classifying policies. If you take a couple of books in macroeconomics or in policy environment, you will see different people have classified these policies in different ways. So therefore, this is, I wouldn't say this is the way of classifying the policy. You may come across other ways of classifying policies as well, right? So the first classification here we are going to talk is substantive and administrative policies. Now, the substantive policies are mainly focused on the legislation or the programs and the practices that govern the substantive aspects of community work. Now, this is mainly include uh, the policies include, for example, income security, employment initiatives, and childcare services. So, policies that are in relation to the community or the social services, that type of policies we identify as substantive policies. In contrast, we have administrative policies where it gives all the guidelines and things that are related to the administration of an organization or a government. And the administrative policies can be more complex in comparison to the substantive policies. So, substantive policies mainly focus on the welfare of the people, community. Um, for example, childcare, employment initiatives, where small business development, or again, those policies are more into the more concerned about the betterment of the general public, whereas there are administrative policies. For example, you know that there are මොනවද අපි කියන්නේ district councils වගේ දේවල් තියෙනවා ඊළඟට නගර සභා මහනගර සභා වගේ there are bodies that are related to the
Municipal Council.
yes, municipal councils are there, so for the administration of the countries. So the policies that are derived for the purpose of administration of a given country or organization is identified as administrative policies. And also there is another kind of a classification as vertical and horizontal policies. Now this classification is mainly done based on how the policies are being formed. Now, if I explain, now starting with the first bullet point, vertical policy refers to a policy that is developed within the organization and that has responsibility for the implementation. Vertical policy is developed within a single organization structure and generally start with a broad overarching policy and sometimes called a corporate or a framework policy. Now, such decisions are made at the head office. Now, in vertical policy, you know the word meanings of vertical as well as horizontal. So, vertical in the sense it's a top-down policy. That means the policies are developed at the top level of the organization or by the government or the institution, and then it is being communicated to the lower levels of the organization, right? So when I think if you have done the management lessons by now, I don't know whether you have had a fundamentals of management or something like that for a management basis course. But in a general, if you take a general organization, we identify two types of organizational structures. In a general organization, there are two types of organization structures mainly talking about. One is vertical structure, the other one is horizontal structure. Let me just quickly draw something that you can, so that you can see. So in a vertical structure, if I draw like this, I think hopefully you can see. The organization usually start with like a CEO, managing director, someone like that, and then there are board of directors are there, like marketing directors, administrative directors, right? Finance, there are different directors under them, and then of course there are different departments under these people, and likewise this is a vertical structure. I hope you can see my drawing at the corner. So this is a vertical structure more or less, right? So in a vertical structure there are lots of levels and at the very bottom level, you will find all the operational people, like normal working employees are at the top, very low level. So this is where now at the very top level, you can see the policies are developed at the very top level with the inclusion of the board of directors and the CEO or the GM. They are the people who are developing the policies, and then they communicate those policies to the lower levels. So people who are in the lower level has no influence whatsoever on the development of the policies. Right? So ඉහළ ස්තරවල ඉන්න නිලධාරීන් කම්පැනි එකේ ෆවුන්ඩර් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, අයිතිකාරයා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, එහෙම නැත්නම් චීෆ් එක්සිකියුටිව් ඔෆිසර්ස්ලා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, or the board of directors. ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි කම්පැනි එකට අදාළව එහෙම නැත්නම් රටක නම් ඒ ඉහළම නිලතල වල ඉන්න කට්ටිය තමයි policies ටික හදාන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද කරන්නේ? ඒ policy එක යාළගේ පහළින් ඉන්න කට්ටියට communicate කරනවා that they have to adopt or they have to work on these policies කියලා. That is why these policies are sometimes called as corporate or framework policies, because they are formed at the topmost level or mostly at the head office, and then these are communicated to the regional and operational level, to the lowest levels. Right? So that is one way of making a policy. So you build them at the top level and then you communicate to the operational level. So the people at the operational level has no influence of making the corporate policy, but they are the one who are implementing the operational decision. So this is one way. I mean, we cannot say that is, I mean, if there are some organizations who are adopting this style. Give me a moment. Right. And then the other type is horizontal level in contrast, developed by two or more organizations. Each of these has the ability or the mandate to deal with only one dimension of a given situation. Now, in certain policies are there, different parties get together and make one particular decision. Now, for example, if you take the agriculture policy of a country, now you know agriculture, agriculture is not something that is very isolated. When you talk about agriculture, that is a very, very complicated industry, very complex industry, I must say. It is comprised of so many different aspects. Now, when you take, now we are taking plantation sector separately, obviously. We have taken in our country, we have taken the plantation or the state sector into a separate ministry. But for the other things like livestock, water management, land use, land resources, marketing aspects, all these things comes under the agriculture, the purview of the agriculture ministry. Therefore, agriculture, when you make such policies, different institutions comes together and contribute for the development of the policy, rather than one institution take the dominance and develop in the policy, right? So I mean, we cannot say one way is better than the other. අපිට කියන්න බෑ horizontal විදිය හොඳයි, vertically policy හදන විදිය හොඳ නැහැ, එහෙම කියලා කියන්න බෑ, because that is very specific. Sometimes the making the horizontal policies are better for the given situation, while in some cases it has to be vertical policies. Therefore, horizontal policies is created between parts of an organization or among organizational components that are similar in the hierarchical position. So when the agriculture policy is developed, not only the Ministry of Agriculture is the main responsible body for making the agriculture policy in Sri Lanka, but there are so many other institutions, universities, so many people are engaged in the developing of this policy. For example, the Department of Agriculture, then there are water resource management and what is that?
Hierarchical position is Duravali.
Yes, in Sinhala is yes, Duravali. And there are livestock management, and of course land use management. වගේ ගොඩාක් කට්ටිය එකතු වෙලා තමයි කෘෂිකාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හදන්නේ. එතකොට එක්කෙනෙක් තමයි ultimately responsible, එහෙම නැත්නම් ultimately ඒකේ වගකීම තියෙන්නේ කෘෂිකර්ම අමාත්‍යාංශයේ, කෘෂිකර්ම අමාත්‍යතුමාට සහ අධි අමාත්‍ය ලේකම් අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම් වරුන්ට තමයි අවසානයේ implementation responsibility එක තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් these are made by the involvement of several other institutions. යගු ලංකාවේ තියෙන අපේ ගත්තම agriculture faculties මේ සියල්ලෝගෙම ලොකු දායකත්වයක් තියෙනවා ලංකාවේ කෘෂිකාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හදනකොට. ඒතර ඒ වගේ අපි දැන් මේ කෘෂිකර්ම මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකෙන් නැත්නම් කද්ද කියන්නේ කෘෂිකර්ම අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් හදලා ඉවර වෙලා අනිකුත් ආයතනට එවනවා නෙමෙයි මේක මේකම ඉම්ප්ලිමන්ට් කරන්න කියලා කියනවා නෙමෙයි. නමුත් අනිත් හැමෝගෙම ඉන්පුට්ස් අරගෙන තමයි ඒ වගේ ජාතික වශයෙන් වැදගත් වෙන ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් ඇත්තටම නිෂ්පාදනය කෙරෙන්නේ. Right. And also there are reactive and proactive policies are there. So this is another form of classification where reactive policy emerges in response to a concern or a crisis that must be addressed. Now, for example, you know that we have faced the COVID-19 pandemic couple of like 2 years back, I would say 2 years, yes. The last 2021 වගේ 2021 වගේ කාලේ අපිට COVID තිබුණේ. එතකොට during this period 2021 වගේ කාලේ, so about 2 years back, we actually never heard of these sort of pandemic එකක් කියන එක අපිට ඇත්තටම ලොකු familiar situation එකක් නෙමෙයි. How to react මේ වගේ දෙයකට කොහොමද ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වන්නේ කියලා අපිට ලොකු අවබෝධයක් තිබුණේ නැහැ. අපිට විතර කියන්නේ අපි කියන එකෙන් මම අදහස් කරන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවට අපේ රජයට අපේ ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකේ අදාළ අයට ලොකු අවබෝධයක් තිබුණේ නැහැ මේ වගේ එකට කොහොමද හරියටම රියැක්ට් කරන්න කියලා. But now when something like that happens, when a crisis or a hazard situation happens, then they come up with policies. Okay, if this happens in the future, this is how we are going to act. So those are we identified as reactive policies. Then උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තාම when the COVID-19 pandemic happened, not only Sri Lanka, all the countries in the world, they did not know how to respond to such a situation, right? Then කොහොමද COVID-19 හැදෙන කෙනෙක් identify කරගන්නේ, එයාව isolate කරගන්න, how we can isolate those people, how we are going to identify the close contacts, and how we are going to isolate those people, quarantine procedures, and even how when a death occurs or COVID හැදලා කෙනෙක් මරුණාම කොහොමද එයාගේ අවසන් කටයුතු කරන්නේ, මේ දේවල් එකක්වත් අපි කලින් දැනගෙන හිටියේ, අපිට කලින් ෆැමිලිය වෙලා තිබිච්ච දේවල් නෙමෙයි. But our health policy improved, එහෙම නැත්නම් revised after this sort of a pandemic. අපි විතරක් නෙමෙයි ලංකාවේ ලෝකෙම රටවල් වල මේ කලුත් සිටුේෂන් එකක් මේ වගේක් වුණාට පස්සේ තමයි අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නෙ. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අපේ සෞඛ්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තියට මෙන්න මේ වගේක් වුණොත් මෙන්න මෙහෙම අපි රියැක්ට් කරන්න කියලා අපිට අලුතෙන් එකතු වෙනවා. ඒතර ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානය වුණත් එහෙමයි. ඒගොල්ලෝ දැනගෙන ඉන්නවා මේ වගේ දේවල් තියෙනවා කියලා අපි දන්නවා. නමුත් until it happens for real, we don't know how to respond and we don't know how to handle the consequences of such action. දැන් තව ගත්තොත් අපි ගත්ත tsunami වගේ situation එකක් ගත්තත් ඒ වගේ. tsunami ආව අපිට 2004 විතර වගේනේ. එතකොට ඊට කලින් අපි අහලා තිබ්බට නමුත් we did not really experience such a situation. But after that happens, now we have established tsunami early warning systems, alert systems, and how to help the people who got affected by tsunami. Likewise, these are reactive policies. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අපේ ඔය මොනවාද කියන්නේ මොනවාද අනතුරු වලින් විපතටපත් වෙච්ච අයට උපකාර කරන විදි ඒව ඔක්කොම policy ගත වෙන ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශන වලට include වෙන්න පටන් ගන්න. ඇත්තටම දෙයක් සිදු වුණාට පස්සේ because we did not have the experience before that. So those are reactive policies. For example, health emergencies or environmental disasters like tsunami are two examples. Right? So the COVID and tsunami are good two examples that we never had those things before, but now our disaster management policies අපි කියන්නේ ආපදා කළමනාකරණ ප්‍රතිපත්ති කියලා අපේ රටවල තියෙනවානේ. එහෙම එකක් ආපදා කළමනාකරණ ප්‍රතිපත්ති සහ සෞඛ්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්ති හොඳම උදාහරණ තමයි මේ reactive policies වලට, because we are adjusting and improving our policies once something some crisis or some difficult situation has happened, right? So proactive policies, by contrast, are introduced and pursued through deliberate choice, right? Now, proactive policies, this not are reactive, but we are deliberately කරන දේවල්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේකට විශේෂ හේතුවක් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ අපිට proactive policy එකක් කරන්න. We are introducing new policies by choice, by purpose. So national skills and learning agenda exemplifies this approach. And educational policies ඔයගේ දේවල් ගත්තාම we don't need a disaster to improve our educational policy, right? Disaster එකකින් පස්සේ එහෙම improve වෙන අවස්ථාවක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් there are certain policies we have to improve and we have to revise and revisit even though there is no such action to react. එහෙම ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වීමක් විදිහට නෙමෙයි. නමුත් by choice we have to provide support and we have to plan and act according to the policies, even though without any not as a reaction to something, but in general we have to have those policies to help the civilians of the country. So those are reactive and proactive policies. And the last categorization, I suppose it is last, yes, is current and future policies. Now, policies that are currently on the public agenda and those that are not. Now, issues already on the public policy agenda, healthcare often have a high profile. Now, there are some current policies. Then, udaharana about 2 years back, healthcare policies, the national health policy was one of the very hot topic skill, very highly referred to, highly talked about, very frequently talked about policy. ලංකාවේ අවුරුදු දෙකකට විතර කලින් අපි සෞඛ්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තිය කියනකොට COVID pandemic එකත් එක්කලා it was a very currently timely policy එකක් වුණා. Afterwards, now you can remember soon after the president, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa has banned the importation of inorganic fertilizer. Then agriculture, we actually sort of forgot about all the COVID-19 and all those problems we had, but then we started talking more about agriculture. ලංකාවට මොනවාද පොහොර ආනයනය තහනම් කරත් එක්කලා then agriculture became a very highly frequently talking policy, current policy එකක් බවට පත් වෙනවා. ඒකට ඒ වගේ time to time there can be policies that are currently talked about, currently discussed about, and those are identified as current policies. Those are alive. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගන්න හරියම alive මේ වෙලාවේ වැඩිපුරම කතා වෙන policies. දැන් අදටම අද වෙනකොට දැන් පහුගිය කාලේදී ඇත්තටම කෘෂි කාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්ති ඊළඟට ජාතික ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්ති කියන so economic policy is something that is always alive, right? අපේ රටේ ආර්ථික අපේ රටේ විතර නෙමෙයි ඕනම රටක ගත්තාම ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය කියන්නේ that is all something that is always been discussing. Then අපේ පහුගිය කාලවල දන්නවා we had very high rates of inflation, food price inflation was very high. Then our food prices were skyrocketing and there were so many people below the poverty line. So ඔයගොල්ලෝ දැන් මම හිතනවා economic indicators ගැන කතා කරන්න මේ දේවල් ගැන කතා කරන්න නැති කියලා උදාහරණයක් එක්කලා we had so many people below the poverty line, so many people who lost the job because of the COVID as well as the economic crisis, and our inflation rates were high, our exchange rates were extremely high. Now when you're learning these subjects, you have to have that like bit of a practical knowledge as well. Then අපි ඔයාලගේ අනිත් subjects වල නම් ගොඩක් කරලා මම හිතනවා ඔයාලට දෙන්නේ theoretical knowledge එක, laboratory ඒ පැත්තේ knowledge එක කියලා. නමුත් මේ subject එකේදී the things that we saw on news, maybe things that we read on social media are going to be quite useful. Right? Therefore, there are certain policies that are alive and currently talked about, while there are certain policies not quite alive. සමහර policies තියෙනවා එහෙම ගොඩක්ම hot topics නෙමෙයි, නිතරම revise වෙන්නේ නැහැ, නිතරම කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ, but they are there. Right? So those are identified as future policies, එහෙම නැත්නම් never been alive on the public agenda. Right? එතකොට when there is දැන් අනිත් සමහර ගොඩක් policies තියෙන දැන් ගත්තාම අපේ රටේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔය එක මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකකට අදාළව හැම වෙලාවකම එක policy එකක් තියෙනවා. හැම මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකකටම මේගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශයක් තියෙනවා. දැන් if you take අපි දෙන්න කතා කරන්නේ ඇත්තටම කෘෂිකර්ම අමාත්‍යාංශයට අනුබද්ධව අපි කතා කරන කෘෂිකර්ම ජාතික කෘෂිකර්ම ප්‍රතිපත්තිය ඊළඟට education ministry they have the education policy, health ministry they have the health policy, then in මොනවද තියෙන්නේ small business development policies, national policy framework for small SME development කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා in relation to the small and medium scale enterprises. Likewise, we have so many land use policies are there. Telecommunication, ICT, then transportations, technology. There are lots of policies are there in relation to different ministries, and some are currently being discussed, while some are not very alive on the public agenda. Right? So that is another sort of a classification, whether the policy is alive and whether this policy is being discussed frequently. So public policy has a clear and unique purpose. Now public policy, now we are here mainly focusing on the public policies as I told you earlier. Public policy seeks to achieve a desired goal that is considered to be in the best interest of all members of the society. Right? So public policy seeks to achieve desired goal that is considered to be in the best interest of all members of the society. So each and every policy has a desired goal and ultimate outcome that is to be attained. Most of the time, the policies are designed to deliver the best for the society or the people of the country. වෙලාවකම policy එකකින් අපි ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශ ප්‍රතිපත්තියකින් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය වෙන්න පුළුවන්, කෘෂිකාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තිය වෙන්න පුළුවන්, සෞඛ්‍ය වෙන්න පුළුවන්, අධ්‍යාපනය වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මේ ඕනම එකකින් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ, අපි කියන්නේ රජයේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ ඒ රටේ රටවැසියන්ට පුරවැසියන්ට යහපතක් කිරීම තමයි යාළගේ පරමාර්ථය වෙන්නේ. එතකොට උදාහරණයක් විදිහට clean air, clean water, good health, high rates of employment, innovative economy, attractive trades, minimum levels of poverty, high education. Those are some of the aims of policies, different policies, right? Improved literacy, then අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිපත්තිය නම් education attainment, literacy rates secure කරන එක. ඒ වගේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂක ප්‍රතිපත්තිය කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඒවෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන low crime, terrorism නැති කරන එක රටේ, internal ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වෙන එක නතර කරන එක. ඒ වගේ මේ හැම ප්‍රතිපත්තියකින්ම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ රටේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සුන්ට වඩා යහපත් වටපිටාවක් ජීවත් වෙන්න, වඩා යහපත් වටපිටාවක් ලබා දෙන එක තමයි මේ පොලිසි වල තියෙන ප්‍රධානම පරමාර්ථය, right? ඒතර පාරිසරික ප්‍රතිපත්ති කියලා තියෙන environmental policies are there. They assure that our citizens, civilians are getting clean air, getting access to clean air, clean water, good land areas, good food, right? And ජාතික ආහාර ප්‍රතිපත්ති කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා food security, ආහාර ආරක්ෂණ. So likewise, policies are there to assure or to make sure that the people in the country are well off. Policies are there to make the best interest for all the members of the country or the society. Right? So sometimes policies are deemed to promote public interest in target only a certain groups. Then if we take the educational policies or health policies, economic policies, food policies, those things are more broad and focuses on the population of a country in general. So we don't have a specific food policy කියලා ගත්තාම අපිට එහෙම විශේෂයෙන් කාටවත් කියලා නෙමෙයි. නමුත් අපි රටේම ඉන්න මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ආහාර සුරක්ෂිතතාවය රැකීම තමයි ජාතික ආහාර ප්‍රතිපත්තියකින් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. නමුත් there are certain policies that are targeted only for a certain groups. For example, small business sector, SMEs කියලා කියන small and medium enterprises අපි කියනවා කුඩා හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ ව්‍යාපාර කියලා කියන මේවට. ඒකවල the national policy framework for SME development is specifically designed to promote the SME sector. Right? ඒ වගේම the national plantation development policy එතකොට ඒක මොකද්ද? ඒක specifically targeted for the development of the plantation sector and the people who are involved in the plantation sector, not everyone, right? Ultimately, the country will be get benefited, everyone will be get benefited, but mainly targeted on the people who are engaged in the small business sector, people who are engaged in the fisheries. Then fisheries related තියෙනවනේ fisheries. එහෙම නැත්නම් මොකක්ද කියන්නේ දීවර කටයුතු වලට අදාළ කට්ටියට තමයි ඒක අදාළ වෙන්නේ. ඒතකොට ඒ වගේ there are certain policies not directed towards the entire population but towards certain groups. Whereas some policies such as education, food, economic, other policies, those are targeted to the entire population. Right? Is that clear? Right? So there are different right? So there are different, the focus of the policy can be different. Sometimes the policies can focus only on one particular group of people, while some policies can focus on the entire population of the country. Right? Right. Now this is where our this one. Right. Now this is where our lesson begins from the National Agricultural Policy. Right? I hope that you have a slightly a bit good knowledge about the agriculture sector of Sri Lanka. So we'll start with a little bit of that. Right. So if I just give you a brief overview, because I'm not going to talk a lot about the agriculture sector in general, because obviously you know what is agriculture sector and all that. So we are just going to give you a little introduction to the agriculture sector. So the agriculture sector is the cornerstone of Sri Lankan economy, with more than 70% of people living in rural areas depending on the agriculture for their livelihoods. And also, if you read the second point, currently this sector contributes to about 18% of the GDP and 30% of the employment. Now you can see, now even when we were kids, like when we were in the small age, we used to refer to our country as a agricultural country. When we were writing essays and all that, when we were grade 5 සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පහවසර විතර ඉන්නකොට ලංකාව ගැන රචනාවක් ලියනකොට අපි කොහොමද පටන් ගන්නෙ? ශ්‍රී ලංකාව කියන්නේ කෘෂි කාර්මික රටක්. But today, of course, we are still feel the same. Sri Lanka is an agricultural country, but you can see the contribution to the GDP or the gross domestic product is only 18%. Right? I think you know what are the other sectors that are involved in the gross domestic that are contributing to the gross domestic product of the country. මම හිතනවා ගිය සතියේ නෙමෙයි sorry මේ lesson එකේ මුල භාගයේදී ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගන්න නැති කියලා කලින් class එකේදී do you know what are the economic sectors that are that comprise in the Sri Lankan economy?
Industries and services.
Yes, good. Industries and services are the other two sectors other than the agriculture. Now if you go and see the Central Bank annual report, you can see the contribution of the agriculture sector is the least in comparison to the industry and the services sector. Now, we can see that it is not actually, I mean, we may feel that the contribution of the agriculture sector is reducing day by day or year by year in comparison to the other sectors. But actually what happens is the other two sectors actually are growing quite fast in comparison to the agriculture sector. Agriculture sector එක පුංචි වෙලා යන එකත් වෙනවා ටික ටික ඒකත් ඒ වගේම අනිකුත් sectors දෙකේ industry and the service sectors, these two sectors have a very rapid growth, so its contribution to the agriculture sector is increasing. But still, even though it is contributing only 18% to the to the country's GDP, more than 70% of the people living in rural areas more than 70% of the people living in the rural areas still depends on the agriculture for their lives. I mean, you can see that when we go like about a couple of kilometers away from Colombo, you can still see, I mean, in the urban areas, of course, you can see lots of industries and service sector organizations are evolving. But when you go a couple of miles or kilometers away from the Colombo or the urban areas, there are lots of people are depending on the agriculture sector. So agriculture, it's mainly about paddy cultivation, but there are lots of other like dairy and what else? Fruit and vegetable growers are there. There are lots of other people who are involved in the agriculture sector. ඒ කියන්නේ 118ක් කියලා කිව්වට ලංකාවේ දේශ නිෂ්පාදිතයේ තියෙන contribution එක නමුත් ඊට වඩා ලොකු සේවයක් අපේ රටේ කෘෂිකාර්මික කොටසින් ලොකු contribution එකක් ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයට තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම 30% of the employment generation in general. Right? And someone has asked when the class is going to end. I'm not quite sure. Do you have any other things to attend? It is 2, probably up to 5 p.m. I suppose. I'm not going to take all the like 7 hours or so. ඔයගොල්ලෝ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කොහොමද යන ක්ලාස් එකක් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කීයද වෙනකම් කරනවද? උදේට පටන් ගන්නවා කීයක් විතර වෙනකම් යනවද?
8:30 to 3:30 p.m.
3:30 usually ඒ වගේ නම් උඩට with including the lunch නේද? Including the lunch break නේ.
Yes, tea break and lunch break.
Yes, tea breaks and lunch breaks as well. So we are not going to go for a lunch break or anything. So we can straight away continue after a small break. We'll see how it goes. Probably by 5 we will be able to finish, I suppose, because since this subject has been divided into 2 sections, for one particular section, the content is limited. මොකද මේ subject එක දෙකකට කඩලානේ තියෙන්නේ. දැන් අනිත් subject නම් ඔයගොල්ලෝ එකකටනේ ඉගෙන ගන්න. දැන් මේ subject එක දෙකකට කඩපු නිසා මේකේ එක කොටසකට ලැබෙන content එක අපිට තියෙන්නේ ILOs 2යි cover කරන්න. එතකොට whole day lecture එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කොහොමද? We'll see. We are going to talk about the National Agriculture Policy and the Plantation Sector Policy. ඒ දෙක විතරයි කතා කරන්නේ ඇත්තටම. කොහොමද 4:35 මම දන්නේ ඒ වගේ වෙලාවකදී අපිට ඉවර කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා හිතනවා. So this is not going to be very long. Okay. Okay. Right. So that is a general introduction to the agriculture sector in the country. To give you an idea about how important the agriculture sector is. National Agricultural Policy, the National Agriculture Policy consists of policy statements for food, floriculture, and export agricultural crop sectors. Now, you can see that even though we may feel like the plantation crops are also under the agriculture sector, but definitely those plantation sector is excluded from the agriculture sector because of its importance. Whether that is something that brings quite a high amount of foreign exchange to the country. Therefore, we are maintaining a separate ministry as well as separate policy for the plantation sector. And then again, from the agriculture sector, dairy sector and fisheries are also excluded, right? මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරන්නේ අතන food, floriculture, some export agricultural crops. What are export agricultural crops? ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේනකොට මම හිතනවා export agriculture ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙනවද දන්නේ නැහැ. කතා කරලා තියෙනවද export agriculture මේ විදිය ඔයගොල්ලෝ plantation course එක ඇතුලේ? Export agricultural crops. Do you know what are export agricultural crops? Yes or no? Export agricultural? No. Okay. Right. So export agricultural crops. I'm not because I'm not a plantation person. I'm a plantation specialist. So I don't have an exact definition for export agricultural crops, but I can. No, tea rubber are not export agricultural crops. Export agricultural the plantation crops කියන්නේ දරුවෝ tea ඊළඟට rubber, coconut, sugar cane, cashew ඕවා තමයි අපි කතා කරන්නේ plantation crops විදිහට. But export agricultural crops කියන්නේ මේවා මම දන්නේ මොකද්ද මේකට සිංහලෙන් Right, Aparayana Krishibhoga. We identify those as like beetle, cinnamon, pepper, cardamom, nutmeg and clove, those type of crops like arecanut. අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට identify කරන්නේ export agricultural crops කියලා. Especially cinnamon, pepper, beetle, cloves, nutmeg. Those type of crops are identified as export agricultural crops. Now, if you tea is not an export agricultural crop. අපව මම පැහැදිලි කරන්න ඕනේ tea කියන්නේ අපේ ප්‍රධාන අපනයන කෘෂි භෝගයක් තමයි. නමුත් tea අයිති වෙන්නේ plantation crop එකක් විදිහට. හරිද? ඒකේ වෙනස EACs කියලා කියන්නේ දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා ඇති මාතලේ තමයි තියෙන්නේ EAC මොකද්ද පරීක්ෂණ ආයතනය. දැන් tea වලට අපි දන්නවා වෙනමම තියෙනවා TRI, Tea Research Institute, rubber වලට Rubber Research Institute, coconut වලට Coconut Research Institute, ඒ වගේම export agricultural crops වලට තියෙනවා export agriculture crop research institute කියලා එකක්. ඒක පිටලා තියෙන මාතලේ. So they are doing researches related to mainly ඔය අපි කියන්නේ candy and home gardens කියලා. ඒවැ තියෙන spice crops තියෙනවා. උදාහරණ විදිහට කුරුඳු, ගම්මිරිස්, සාදික්කා, වසාවාසී, ළඟට එනසාල්, අනිත් පැත්තෙන් ගත්තාම බුලත්, පුවක්, ඔය හැම crop එකක්ම අයිති වෙන්නේ export agricultural crops විදිහට. right? ඒතර අපනයනේ පදනම් කරගෙන වවන්නේ මේවා plantation crops නෙමෙයි. ඒකයි වෙනස වෙන්නේ. දැන් අපි දන්නවා tea නම් rubber නම් අපි වවන්නේ plantation එකක් විදිහට. නමුත් ගම්මිරිස් ගත්තොත් ඊළඟට සාදික්කා වගේ ගස් ගත්තොත් ඊළඟට කුරුඳු වගේ ගත්තොත් අපි හිම කරගන්න ඕන plantations ඇති. නමුත් එහෙම වවන්නේ plantation crops විදිහට නෙමෙයි.
බහුභෝග
agricultural crops විදිහට තමයි අපි හඳුන්වලා දෙන්නේ. That is a separate crop sector that is also under the purview of the agricultural ministry. That's what I wanted to say, right? Therefore, we are having a separate session for plantation. The plantation crops saha export agricultural crops කියන එක differentiate කරගන්න. Plantation crops තමයි මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ tea, coconut, rubber, sugar cane, palm උත් දැන් palm oil කියන එකක් දැන් හරිම popular වෙන industry එකක්. palm ඊළඟට cashew තියෙනවා ටිකක්. ඒ වගේ ඒවා තමයි අපි කියන්නේ plantation crops විදියට. Right? Is that clear? So don't say that tea or rubber as a export agriculture crop එකක් නෙමෙයි. tea rubber කියලා කියන්නේ they are plantation. In terms of now the objectives of the national agriculture policy ජාතික කෘෂි කාර්මික ප්‍රතිපත්තියේ පරමාර්ථ තමයි food and nutrition security of the country. රටේ ආහාර සහ පෝෂණ අවශ්‍යතාවය, පෝෂණ සුරක්ෂිතතාවය. Right? And then enhance employment in them may if you have a simple, if you can go to the site of Department of Agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture, you can download the I will probably upload the things, right? LMS upload karanna me document එක. You can download the National Agriculture Policy from the Ministry of Agriculture website, and these are the exact objectives that are stipulated in the policy document. මේ policy document එකකින් තමයි මේ ටික මම අරගෙන තියෙන්නේ. මේ ටික policy document එකේ as it is තියෙන දේවල්, right? ඉතින් අපි ඒක තමයි මෙතනදී කතා කරන්නේ. So enhance employment opportunities income through adoption of technically feasible, socially acceptable and economically viable and මේ ලස්සන වචන ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ ලංකාවේ දේශපාලනයේ මොනවාද පොතපත එහෙම ලියනකොට ඔය වගේ ටිකක් ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශන ලියනකොට ලස්සනට වචන දාලා ලියලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් they are saying that technically feasible, socially acceptable, economically viable and environmental friendly agricultural production technologies and marketing and related strategies. Right? So the main aim is to ensure the food and nutrition security of the country, and also to uplift the agriculture sector through modern technology and something that does not harm the society and the environment. They can happy agriculture promote කරන අතර වාරදීම there has to be mechanisms to secure the environment, because we know that agriculture is one of the main polluters of the environment. කෘෂිකර්මය කියලා කියන්නේ අපිට කැම ලැබෙන ක්‍රමය තමයි. නමුත් පරිසර දූෂණය කිරීමේ අංක එක විදිහට ඇත්තටම සලකන්නේ කෘෂිකාර්මික කටයුතු. කෘෂිකාර්මික කටයුතු නිසා ඉතා විශාල පරිසර දූෂණයක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. අහිතකර කියන්නේ green house gases emit කරනවා. ඊළඟට සත්තු ඔය හරක් එහෙම හදනවා කියලා කියන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මෙතේන් වගේ දේවල් පරිසරයට මුදා හැරෙනවා. ඊළඟට අහිතකර chemicals වර්ග ජලයට මුදා හැරෙනවා. ඊළඟට other than that there are land pollution, water pollution, land degradation, chemical contaminations. There are lots of things, air pollution, sound pollution. මේ හැම එකක්ම pollution contributor කෙනෙක් තමයි agriculture කියලා කියන්නේ. Therefore, when we are enhancing or improving the agriculture sector, we have to make sure that it is technically feasible, it is technologically appropriate, and whatever you are using is socially acceptable. The things that we are using to promote the agriculture sector has to be accepted by the society, and it has to tally with our economic situation, and also it has to protect the environment, environmentally friendly. That is the main purpose of the national agriculture policy. මොකද රටේ කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ නගා සිටවන එක තමයි ප්‍රධාන අරමුණ. නමුත් ඒ නගා සිටවීමේදී අනිකුත් පැති ගැන අවධානය යොමු කරන්න ඕනේ. කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ නගා සිටවනවා කියලා පරිසරය විනාශ කරපු කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ නගා සිටවන එක ඔබ්ජෙක්ටිව් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ. right? ඒක නිසා මිනිස්සු පරිසරය සදාසීපාව හැම දෙයක් ගැනම අවධානය තියෙන්න ඕනේ when we are developing the national agriculture through the national agricultural policy. Right? So national policies relating to other sectors of agriculture such as plantations, livestock, fisheries and aquaculture, forestry and land use have been formulated by the concerned ministries. As I told you earlier, even though we feel like the plantation, aquaculture, fisheries, livestock, මේවත් agriculture යටතට තමයි වැටෙන්නේ. නමුත් එහෙම ඔක්කොම එකට දාගත්තොත් it is going to be very complicated, because agriculture itself is very complex. Agriculture කියලා ගත්තාම මේක හරිම complex. ඒක නිසා තමයි අපි කලින් කිව්වා වගේ agriculture policy එකේදී කතා කරන්නේ ඔය floriculture, ඊළඟට paddy, fruit and vegetable, EACs ඔය ටික තමයි අතරම agriculture policy එකේදී කතා කරන්නේ. අනිකුත් sectors like plantation, livestock කියලා කියන්නේ පශුපාලනය, ඊළඟට සත්ත්ව පශුපාලනය, ඊළඟට මොනවාද fisheries කියලා කියන්නේ මත්ස්‍ය ජලජ දීවර කටයුතු. ඒවා ඔක්කොම වෙනත් ministries වලින් තමයි පාලනය වෙන්නේ. They have separate policies for those things. These are not included in the national agricultural policy. Right? So the goals and the objectives of the national agriculture policy again: increase the domestic agricultural production to ensure the food and nutrition security. This is we have discussed earlier. So the main aim is to increase the domestic agricultural production, enhance agricultural productivity and ensure sustainable growth. Enhance agricultural productivity. Per land area, the production has to be increased. Productivity කියලා කියන්නේ එකයි. Per land area, per hectare or per acre, there are plans to increase the production, agricultural production. Maximize benefits and minimize adverse effects of globalization on domestic and export agriculture, which you can understand. And so I'm not going to read all these things. You can, since I'm going to publish these sites on the LMS, you can of course have time to read the things. And also these things are readily available on the National Agricultural Policy document that you can download and see for yourself. And adapt productive farming systems and improve agri-technologies. So while you are improving the production, it is also aimed to reduce the cost of production. එක පැත්තකින් කෘෂිකර්මික ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එක නිෂ්පාදනය වැඩි කරනකොට අනිත් පැත්තේ නිෂ්පාදනය සඳහා යන වියදමත් අව මට්ටමක තියාගෙන කරන එකත් එක අරමුණ. right? එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට ඒකෙන් ලැබෙන දල ලාභය වැඩි කරගන්න පුළුවන් කමක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එක වැඩි කරනවා වගේම අනිත් පැත්තේ cost එක අඩු කරගන්න adapting technologies in farming that are environmentally friendly මම අර කයින් කිව්වා වගේ that if you are enhancing the agriculture you should have mechanisms to protect both environment as well as people right එතකොට පුළුවන් තරම් පරිසර හානිය පරිසර දූෂණය අවම වෙන ක්‍රම වලින් කෘෂි කර්මාන්තය නගා සිටීම තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්න ඕන promote agro based industries and increase employment opportunities because we said that more than 70% of the rural population are still depending on the agriculture sector. Right? එහෙමනම් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම agriculture sector එකේ ලොකු role එකක් play කරනවා අපේ රටේ විරැකියාව එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ රටේ ජනතාවට රැකියා අවස්ථාවන් සපයා දෙන්න. Therefore, promoting employment is an important aspect of developing agriculture sector. Enhance the income and the living standard of the farming community. It is again important because in general when we talk about farmers we tend to see farmers we tend to see farmers as poor people. ඒකයි අපේ ළමයි දැන් even when we are teaching to the undergraduates and if you ask how many of you want to become farmers in the future no one right මොකද අපේ mindset එකේ අපි farmers ලා කියන කෙනාව දාගෙන ඉන්නේ හරිම දුප්පත් අමාරු ජීවිතයක් ගත කරන විදිහට.
Doctors are superior, farmers are inferior. People may that think.
Yes, but when you go to other countries like Australia, New Zealand, USA, and when you talk to the undergraduates, especially in countries like New Zealand, and if you ask them who you want to become after the graduation, of course they want to be a farmer, right? New Zealand වල අපි ළමයින්ගෙන් හොත් එහෙම ඔයාලා මේක ඉවරලා මොකද කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ කියලා of course they want to become a dairy farmer because why they are the richest people in the country. ඒ රටවල farmers ලා තමයි උසස්ම මිනිස්සු අපේ රටවල farmers ලා තමයි දුප්පත් මිනිස්සු. So that is the mindset that we are having, right? Therefore, it is important to, while enhancing the food security and all that, it is important to uplift the living standards of the farming community. That is also one of the aims of the agricultural policy. Right. So as I said earlier, the Ministry of Agriculture is the main responsible body of developing and implementing the national policy for agriculture. Right? National agriculture policy had සකස් කිරීම draft කිරීම ඒක approve කිරීම සහ ඒක implement කිරීමේ ප්‍රධානම කාර්යභාරය තියෙන්නේ කෘෂි කර්ම අමාත්‍යාංශයට in the sense the Minister of Agriculture and the Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. Sorry. Now, from this point onwards, we are going to take the policy statements in the National Agriculture Policy and we are going to talk about one by one and you will see how broad the agriculture sector actually is. Right? දැන් අපි agriculture කියලා අපි දකින්නේ ළමයි හැම වෙලාවකම මොකද්ද පොළොවක් කොටලා ගහක් පැලයක් හිටවලා ඒකෙන් ඒක තමයි අපි agriculture කියලා ගන්න. නමුත් agriculture, when you say the term agriculture, as I said earlier, that is something more very broad and complex. අපි agriculture define කරනකොට අපි කියනවා ළමයි සාමාන්‍ය from seed to the table. එහෙම නැත්නම් farm to the fork කියලා අපි කියනවා. right? අපි කියන්නේ seed to the table කම ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙනවා අපි පැලයක් පොළවේ හිටවලා ඒකෙන් ගන්න crop එක consumer ගේ plate එකට මේසෙට යනකම් වෙන activities ඔක්කොම ටික අපි හඳුනාගන්නේ කෘෂි කර්මාන්තයේ විදිහට. You can imagine how many activities that are there from seed to the table, එහෙම නැත්නම් seed to the plate, එහෙම නැත්නම් farm to fork. ගොවිපලේ ඉඳලා ගෑරුප්පුව දක්වා ෆෝක් කියන්නේ ගෑරුප්පුව කියන එක ගොවිපලේ ඉඳලා ප්ලේට් එක වෙනකම් කන තන වෙනකම් තියෙන සියලුම ඇක්ටිවිටීස් අදාළ වෙනවා ඇග්‍රිකල්චර් කියලා කියුවාම. එතකොට it is not only about plowing the land, it is not only about seeds, it is not only about pesticides and chemicals, it is not only about water management, it is also about marketing, it is also about exportations, it is also about agricultural finance, equipment, agricultural insurance. මේ හැමදේම agricultural කොටස් විදිහට අපිට හඳුනා ගන්න පුළුවන්. right? ඒක නිසා කෘෂි කර්මය කියලා කියන්නේ අර අපි දකින්නේ අර ගෝවියා කුඹරට ගිහිල්ලා පැලයක් හිටවලා ඒක විතරක් නෙවෙයි. right? එතනින් එහාට තාම broad topic එකක් තමයි කෘෂි කර්මය කියලා කියන්නේ. අපි යම් කිසි දෙයක් වගා කරා නම් ඒක consumer ගාවට ගිහිල්ලා consumer ගේ plate එකට ගිහිල්ලා ඒක consume කරන්න පුළුවන් තැනක් බවට පත් වෙනකම් agriculture කියලා යනවා. So the first policy statement in the National Policy Agricultural Policy Framework is promoting agricultural production. Obviously, the policy aims to promote the agricultural production via අරමං කලින් කියපු ටිකම මෙතනත් applicable වෙන්නේ using technically sound, economically viable, environmentally friendly and socially acceptable programs. Right? So when you want to enhance the agricultural production, you have to make sure that you are what? Protecting the environment, protecting the people in the country. Right? ඒක නිසා අපි agriculture පැත්ත වැඩි කරනකොට පරිසරයට හානි කරගෙන මිනිස්සු ලෙඩ කරගෙන එහෙම agriculture කරන්න බෑ. දැන් පහුගිය කාලේ අපි දන්නවා ඔයාලා මම දන්නවද මම දන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් ඔයාලා ටිකක් පොඩි ඇති. එතකොට we had big issues of arsenic and all those yes chemicals getting local prashna then people in Anuradhapura and Mahayangani area they're still feeling very sick api kiwa CKDU kila kiyana chronic kidney diseases kidney prashna lokota ඇති වෙනවා ඊටාම agriculture high areas වල තවමත් ඒවා තියෙනවා. I think with this very high chemical usage, people are facing lots of difficulties and lots of health issues. දැන් අපි production එක වැඩි කර ගන්න කියලා යූරියා කිලෝ ගණන් ගෙනහල්ලා දානවා. ඒක නිසා තමයි ඇත්තටම ඔය පහුගිය රජයෙන් උනත් fertilizer limit කිරීම වගේ දේවල් කරන්න පෙළඹෙන හේතුව ඒකයි. ඉතින් අපි we just aim to increase the production. We are not at all concerned about the environment. We are not at all concerned about the people who are going to consume this. We are not at all concerned about the health of the farmers who are using these chemicals. Therefore, if we just aim to enhance the production, yes, we can do that. කරන්න බැරි නෑ කරන්න පුළුවන්. අනවශ්‍ය chemical වර්ග, hormone, රසායන වර්ග ඔය හැම එකම පාවිච්චි කරලා production එක වැඩි කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඒක sustainable නෑ. That is not a sustainable solution. Right? So if something has to be sustainable, then you have to have the balance. While you are increasing the level of production, the amount of production, you have to make sure that the environment is protected. You have to make sure that the farmers are in good health. You have to make sure that the consumers are in good health after consuming these things. And it has to be affordable, economically viable. When we are producing something, it has to be affordable by the consumers and the farmers has to bear the cost. Likewise, the aim of the one of the aims of the policy, agricultural policy, is to balance all this while promoting the production, agricultural production. And also increase the productivity of water and land by enhancing crop production through the application of sustainable cultivation practices. So we have to maintain the policy is aiming to increase the productivity of water and land, right? So sustainable cultivation practices, as I told you earlier, unnecessary. That is why one of the main reasons that the fertilizer ban has happened. එක පැත්තෙන් අපේ රට ඇත්තටම අපිට තිබුණ ඩොලර් ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි ලොකුටම බලපෑවේ ඔය හැමදේටම ඔය ඉම්පෝර්ටේෂන් බෑන් වලට. ඉතින් ඒකත් එකක්. නමුත් මේ unnecessary fertilizer usage කියන එක ඔය glyphosate එහෙම තහනම් කරන්න තිබිච්ච ලොකු හේතුව ඒවා තමයි. ඉතින් ඇත්තටම unnecessary fertilizer usage එක නිසා farmers ලා consumers ලා හැමෝම ලෙඩ වෙන එක ලොකු concern එකක්. ඒ නිසා there has to be a way of monitoring and regulation. එකපාරටම 100% fertilizer ban කරන එක නෙමෙයි. නමුත් හරි monitor කරන්න, regulate කරන්න monitoring regulation system එකක් තමයි ඇත්තටම අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ so that the sustainable cultivation can be assured. right? හැම පැත්තම balance වෙන්න ඕනේ අනිවාර්යෙන්ම. So the second policy statement is about seed and planting material. Now this is where the agriculture begins, as we know, start with the seed. Now the role of the Minister of Agriculture as well as the Department of Agriculture is to ensure that they are giving the farmers the best quality seed and planting material. The seeds for paddy, you are giving the seeds. But for tea, pepper, crops, you are going to give the planting material. Seed so whatever the planting materials, right? So produce and supply of high quality seeds and planting materials of commercial varieties in a competitive environment with the participation of the state and the private sector. We know that there is a high demand even for paddy. There is a very high demand for seed paddy, very high quality seed paddy වලට ලොකු demand එකක් තියෙනවා. So there is a separate unit attached to the Department of Agriculture. කෘෂිකර්ම ඔයාලා දන්නවා ගන්නවල කෘෂිකර්ම දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව තියෙනවා ලංකාවේ. ඒකේ වෙනමම unit එකක් තියෙනවා. The seed and planting material development division එකක් එහෙම නැත්නම් certification division එකක් වෙනමම තියෙනවා. එයාලා තමයි ලංකාවේ ඉන්න main body එක that people who assure the quality of seed and planting material, and they are the people who are responsible for producing high quality seed and planting material for paddy and other crops like fruit and vegetables. But what happens is, since the demand is very high, they themselves cannot cater to the entire demand of the country. අටේම ඉන්න seed paddy එහෙම නැත්නම් අනිකුත් plant material හදන්න එයාලට විතරක් පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ. They have lots of fields, trial fields and all that to produce this seed, and but the multiplication process දැන් අපි ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි mother seeds හදන්නේ අතරම. Mother seeds හැදුවට ඊට පස්සේ they are giving these to companies like CIC, වගේ තව ගොඩක් companies ඉන්නවා. They are also involved in the process of making this quality seed paddy and other planting material. Therefore, involvement of the private sector is also there to assure that you are giving the best quality seed and planting material. Because when you are getting the highest quality, එතන තමයි අතරම පළවෙනිම තැන අපි ලැබෙන crop එක හොඳ සාර්ථක උසස් මට්ටමේ harvest එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් වන පළවෙනි step එක තමයි using high quality seeds and planting material that are resistant to pests and diseases, drought tolerant, වගේ එක එක ಜಾති තියෙනවා. So when you are using high quality seed and planting material, you will ultimately end up with high level of production. So maintaining seed security by having buffer stocks and certified seeds of recommended varieties. Right? So strict enforcement of governmental certification and quarantine relations with regard to the seeds and planting material. Now, if you have ever gone through the seaports or airports, airport එකක් හරි seaport එකක් හරි හරහා රටකින් රටකට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා නම් ඔයාලා මේ වෙනකොට දන්නවා there are quarantine procedures, right? අපි කියන ශාක නිරෝධායන ශාක නිරෝධායන රෙගුලාසි කියලා තියෙනවා රටකින් රටකට අදාළ වෙන. So National Plant Quarantine Service is also a part of the Department of Agriculture. ලංකාවේ ශාක නිරෝධායනය කියන එකත් Department of Agriculture කියම කොටසක්. එයාලා තමයි ඒකටත් responsible. So when you are bringing planting material or seeds from country to country, or when you are taking from some other country, then you have to go through these plant quarantine procedures. Did you say something? Someone said something? Sorry. Airport එකේ තියෙනවා ඒ වගේම කටුනායක විතරක් නෙමෙයි හැම seaport එකකමත් තියෙනවා. මත්තල ඊළඟට හම්බන්තොට ඔය හැම seaport එකකමත් මේ නිරෝධායන ශාක සහ සත්ව නිරෝධායනයට ආයතන පිහිටවලා තියෙනවා. හේතුව තමයි අපි රටකින් රටකට යනකොට අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඒ නිරෝධායන රෙගුලාසි වලට අන්තර්ගත වෙන්නට ඕන. දැන් ඕගොල්ලෝ දැකලා තියෙන සෝෂල් මීඩියා වල එහෙම හරියට මිනිස්සු දොස් කියනවා ඔය පිටරටක ඉඳලා විශේෂයෙන් ඔය ඩුබායි වගේ රටවල් වල ඉඳලා මිනිස්සු වෙනකොට එයාලගේ ලගේජ් වල අරගෙන එනවා මොනවද? ඇපල්, පොමග්‍රනේට්ස්, ග්‍රේප්ස් වගේ ඒවා අරගෙන එනවා. But it is completely illegal, right? එතකොට කස්ටම් එකේ මොකද කරන්නේ? කස්ටම් එකේ නෙමෙයි අතන ප්ලාන්ට් ක්වොරන්ටයින් ඔෆිසර්ස්ලා ඒක නවත්තලා they have to ඒවා බැගේජ් වලින් අයින් කරලා ඩිස්පෝස් කරනවා. That is the procedure, right? මොකද රටකින් රටකට ඒ විදිහට පළතුරු එළවලු ලයිව්ලි දේවල් කිසිම දෙයක් ගේන්න බෑ. සජීවී කිසිම දෙයක් ගේන්න බෑ. ඩ්‍රයි කරපු ෆෘට් එකක්, ප්‍රොසෙස් කරපු ෆෘට් එකක්, ජෑම් එකක්, කෝඩියල් එකක් ගේන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ප්ලාන්ටින් මටීරියල් එකක් ලයිව් දෙයක් අරගෙන එන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ රටකින් රටකට. මොකද අපි දන්නේ නැහැ මොන වගේ pest and diseases, මොන වගේ germs, මොන වගේ microorganisms මේ fruit එකේ ඉන්නවද කියලා අපි දන්නේ නැහැ. So we may be bringing something entirely new to our ecosystem. අපි entirely new සත්‍යයක් හරි pest එකක් හරි අපේ රට ඇතුළට අරගෙන එන්න පුළුවන්. So it is completely illegal. දැන් අපේ රටේ නම් ඔහොමයි, වෙන රටක නම් සමහර අනිත් ඔය විශේෂයෙන් ඕස්ට්‍රේලියා, නිව්සීලන්ත වගේ රටවල they have very high biosecurity rules. ඒ වගේ වුණොත් එහෙම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඒක ජේල් ටයිම් එකක් දක්වා වුණත් යන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ රටේ නම් ඇත්තටම ඔය අපල් ටික අරගෙන ඩස්බින් දාලා ඉවල මිනිස්සුන්ව යවන එක තමයි කරන්නේ. හැබැයි ඒකටත් අපේ මිනිස්සු මොකද කරන්නේ? වීඩියෝ කරලා ලොකු මේකක් ඇති කරනවා සෝෂල් මීඩියා වල මේගොල්ලෝ මේවා ගෙවල් වලට ගෙනිනවා කන්න දෙන්න නැහැ. කවුරුත් ඒවා ගෙවල් වලට කන්න ගෙනියන්නේ නැහැ. ඔය එන්නේ ඔෆිස් කෙනෙකුටවත් එහෙම කෑම හේනියක් නැහැ. එයාලගේ ඒගොල්ලෝගේ නීතිය තමයි ඉෂ්ට කරන්නේ because it is very strict. Quarantine regulations are very strict that you cannot bring lively planting material, food items, crops, fruits, vegetables to one place to another. එක රටකින් රටකට අපිට එහෙම ගෙනියන්න කිසිම අයිතියක් නැහැ. ඒක මොකද එහෙම ගෙනාපුවම තමයි ඔය අපි දන්නවා ඔය පාතීනියම් ඊළඟට යෝධ නිදි කුඹා ඔය වගේ දේවල්.
Santana camera.
Oh, yes, those things have come to our country because of these unnecessary importations. නෙමෙයි දැන් අපි commercially import කරනවා නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් we have to take some phytosanitary certificates කියලා අපි කියනවා. phytosanitary regulations තියෙනවා. ඒවට අදාළව ඒ pest and disease free කියලා with the certification you can import commercially. That is okay, but you cannot just bring an apple from another country අපේ බබාලට කන්න දෙන්න, family එකේ අයට දෙන්න, තෑගි දෙන්න කියලා ඒ වගේ දේවල් ගේන්න බෑ. මේක මම මේ නිකමට කිව්වේ මේකට කොහොලගේ lesson එකට අදාළ නෑ. නමුත් I have seen that people in social media because of their lack of awareness they are making lots of reels that saying that these custom officers shopping bag වලින් හොරකම් කරනවා, ළමයින්ට කන්න දෙන පළතුරු ටික හොරකම් කරනවා වගේ කතන්දර කියනවා because they are not aware of the law. වෙන රටක නම් ඇත්තටම හිරේ ගිහින් තමයි නතර වෙන්නේ ඔය වගේ දේවල් ඒ මිනිසුන්ටත් ලොකුවට තර්ජනය කරන්න ගියා. right? ඒක නිසා be aware of the law that ඕගොල්ලෝ උනත් කවදාද රටකට යනකොට මෙහි ඉඳලා වෙන රටවල් වලට ගෙනියන්න හෝ වෙන රටකින් මෙහෙට ගේන්න කිසිම අයිතියක් නැහැ without proper certification. ඒකට අදාළ certifications තියෙනවා no problem. That is allowed. Right. Third one, which is again an important section in the agriculture, that is about fertilizers. So again, you know that we have talked about this one, the ban of importation ban of inorganic fertilizer last year. එතකොට මේක තුළ ඒක තමයි දැන් government එකේ එක part එකක් තමයි make sure that making sure that the agriculture sector has enough high quality fertilizer for their cultivations. So the government has realized that we are using some unnecessary levels of chemical fertilizers. That is one of the many reasons to impose that ban of importation. We know that our farmers have suffered, and also we as consumers have suffered a lot because of the lack of food availability, because of the fertilizer ban. But again, that is a role of the agricultural policy to maintain balanced importation of or the use of fertilizer in agriculture. And also what they are promoting is that biofertilizers organic and biofertilizers that is being promoted by the agricultural policy that are very less or least harmful for the environment. So it is recommended mostly to use organic and biofertilizers, but there can be problems in relation to the productivity. කොච්චරක් productivity එකක් තියනවද කියන එක questionable වෙන්න පුළුවන්, but still that is the recommended way. And also giving fertilizer subsidies is also part of the national agriculture policy to identify people who require the fertilizer subsidies. Right? So taking appropriate actions to prevent the misuse of fertilizer subsidy. Okay. Right. And then along with the fertilizers, then comes the pesticides. You know what are pesticides are. So again, as I told you earlier, minimize the use of synthetic pesticides through promoting biopesticides and integrated pest management. So what is integrated pest management? Have you ever heard of the term? Now again, Pierre Kalinko wage biofertilizers wagema, there are biopesticides as well. Like for example, I can remember but I think you remember the issue of Sena Dalambua's scenario. Sena Dalambua's ප්‍රශ්න මම හිතනවා ඔයාලට මතකයි. පහුගිය අවුරුදු දෙකකට තුනකට කලින් විතර ලංකාවේ ඇතිවෙච්ච බඩේරිඟු වලට ඇතිවෙච්ච ප්‍රශ්නේ. They have introduced a biopesticide. එතකොට කවුරු හරි microorganism කෙනෙක් හරි එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙන සතෙක් introduce කරනවා අර ඉන්න සතාව කාලා දාන්න. එතකොට ওই biopesticide ඊට කලින් බී වගාවෙත් සමහර අවස්ථාවලදී introduce කරලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට chemical එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා සතාව මාරලා දානවා වෙනුවට they are using another predatory organism to control the pest. Right? So integrated pest management means it is not just using the chemical fertilizer, it is a combination of several methods. Integrated pest management කියලා කියන්නේ අපි කෙලින්ම ඔය මොනවාද තියෙනවනේ අපේ ඔය හාෆෝස් පටාස් කීකි ඔය එක තියෙන chemicals වර්ග chemical එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා දිලීරයක් හෝ ඒ සතෙක්ව සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අයින් කරනවා වෙනුවට අපිට biopesticides ඊළඟට අපේ traditional methods තියෙනවා ඒ වගේම තව තියෙනවා crop rotation එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ වගේ එක එක ක්‍රම ගොඩක් පාවිච්චි කරලා අවම chemical ප්‍රමාණයක් පාවිච්චි කරලා pest and disease control කරන එකත් එක objective එකක් එක strategy එකක් agriculture policy එකේ. දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා so in ancient Sri Lanka we had lots of good agricultural practices like we used to then උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මිනිස්සු ඉස්සර කුඹුරු කරන්න ගන්න කලින් කුඹුරට වන්දනාමාන කරලා දුම් මල්ලලා බටේ ටිකක් පිළිවෙත් කරලා එහෙම කරනවා. දැන් ඔය දුම් මල්ලන ඒවා එහෙම they are not entirely religious තමයි අපිට පේන විදිහට. නමුත් ඒවෙන් ඇත්තටම වෙන්නේ අර අනවශ්‍ය කුහුඹුව කෘමි සතුන් එන එක එහෙම ටිකක් අඩුවේ කරගන්න එකත් ඒක එක පැත්තක්. ඒ වගේමයි when we are cultivating we used to do some crop rotations. Crop rotations කියලා කියන්නේ අපි we do not cultivate the same crop over and over again. හිතන්න අපි වම්බුටු වවනවා කියලා. So if you are cultivating brinjal this year we are completely going for another crop. එක්කෝ මිරිස් එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙන මොන හරි crop එකක් තමයි ඊළඟ සැරේ වවන්නේ. මොකද this year දැන් කවුද බ්‍රින්ජාල් වලට එන්නේ පොඩ් බෝරස්ලා හැම ඉන්නවනේ පණුව జాතියක් එහෙම එනවනේ බ්‍රින්ජාල් වලට. එතකොට ඒ කට්ටිය එන්නේ නැති crop එකක් තමයි ඊළඟ සැරේ වවන්නේ. Likewise, we are rotating the crop so that the pests are not going to be persist in the field. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ සැරේත් වම්බඩු වවලා ඊළඟ සැරේත් වම්බඩු වවලා දිගටම වම්බඩු වවුවොත් එම් වෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? දිගටම අර එන pest එක මදා field එකේ ඉන්නවා because there's always the crop is there. But when you change the crop, what happens that they will go away when you go for another crop. Likewise, we can rotate the crops. We can do lots of organic activities to protect the crops from pests and diseases, right? So promote the production and use of environmental friendly biopesticides with public and private sector participation. Strictly adhere to the plant protection regulations to prevent alien weeds, insect pests and diseases from entering the country. as I said earlier, quarantine regulations are again well executed by the department, the quarantine plant quarantine center attached to the Department of Agriculture, right? So they are taking as much as care to stop entering alien weeds, pests, and diseases from other countries, because we have some terrible experiences like Parthenium, Yodhinidikumba, Lantana vagi crops. They have completely destroyed our ecosystem because of this, because of the breakage of these quarantine regulations. Right? Somehow they have landed in the country, even though we are trying to follow the strict quarantine regulations. That is why, again, you are not allowed to bring anything from another country in your luggage. Without proper certifications, you cannot bring anything. Right? So that is also part of the agriculture. එකයි මම ඔයාලට කිව්වේ අපි agriculture කියලා කිව්වහම අර පැලයක් හිටවලා එකෙන් ගෙඩියක් කඩා ගන්න එක නෙමෙයි. එතනින් එහාට ගියපු this is a very complex and a complicated subject. Right? මේකල ලොකු area එකක් තියෙනවා අපිට කතා කරනවා නම් agriculture කියන එක ගැන. And agricultural machinery, again, something very important. Encourage public and private sectors as well as the universities to develop and manufacture agricultural machinery with appropriate technology suitable for the agricultural sector. Now we know that the developing countries, as I said earlier, like USA, Canada, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, they are using lots and lots of agricultural machinery in their plantations, in their cultivations, right? But being a small country or a developing country, we don't have that much of knowledge as well as money to handle these cultivations. Therefore, it is necessary for our universities to encourage our universities and research institutions to develop agricultural machines. And even in our university, we have a separate degree for the Bachelor of Technology, the BBST, Biosystems Engineering. So they are engaged in lots of research activities to enhance the agricultural production, like planting machines. Then අපි දන්නවා ඉස්සර නම් අපි ගොයන් ගත්තාම ගොයන් පැල කරේ අතින් ගිහලා අතින් තමයි පැල කරේ. නමුත් we now have some planters, we have seeders, ඒ වගේ ලොකොඩක් ඊළඟට harvesters අපි ළඟ තියෙනවා. That ඒ වගේ we have to implement agricultural machinery so that we can limit the labor usage. මොකද දැන් ඔය labor usage එකක් කියන එකත් ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක්. One of the many reasons that our undergraduates do not want to engage in the agriculture. මොකද අපි කැමති නෑ මඩේ බැහැගෙන ගිහිල්ලා පැල හිටවන්න ගොයන් කපන්න ඕවට කැමති නෑ අපේ ළමයි. ඒකත් එක හේතුවක් අපි agriculture වලින් ඈතට යන්න. ඒකට ඒව avoid කරන්න තමයි අතරම අපිට පුළුවන් technology use කරන්න. Then drone technologies තියෙනවා පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්. Now in other countries, they are using drone technologies and GPS systems to track the irrigation, fertilization, fertigation. ඔයගේ track කරන්න පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ GPS සහ drone systems. The drone පාවිච්චි කරලා තමයි fertilize කරන්න ඕන කොතනද water වතුර දාන්න ඕනේ කොයි පැත්තේද කියලා ඒවා identify කරගන්නේ drone technology වගේ use කරලා. එතකොට mechanization and technology is very important in agriculture because we have to move with the world. If we want to increase the production and also when we are facing the problems of lack of labor, agricultural labor is a local issue because in the future years, people are really unwilling to work as farmers. Therefore, we have to find some modern and mechanized ways to encourage people to engage in the agriculture sector. Right? So, and again, it is very cost effective. දැන් අපි අද farmers ලා හිතන්න ඉස්සර නම් කුඹුරක් කලාට පස්සේ ඒක harvest කරන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් ගොයන් කපන්න. ගොයන් කයි කියලා කියන්නේ ඉස්සර. ඒවට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කොච්චර මිනිස්සු ඕනවලු සාමාන්‍යයෙන් 50ක් 100ක් විතර එකතුලා තමයි ඒකත් දවසක් දෙකක් විතර කපලා තමයි කුඹුරක තියෙන ගොයන් ටික ගොඩ දා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. නමුත් අද we have the combined harvesters. අපි සරලව කියන්නේ බූතය කියලා එහෙම. අපි farmers කියන්නේ බූතය කියලා. භූතයක් වෙනවා සුනාමි කියලා තියෙනවා ඒ වගේ ඇයි කියන්නේ තෙම් සුනාමියක් ආවා වගේ තමයි you just අපි අර farmers ලා 50ක් විතර එකතු වෙලා දවස් දෙකක් විතර තිස්සේ කපන කුඹුර එක පැය දෙකකින් විතර සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම harvest කරලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. So which is very cost effective. මිනිස්සු 100කට විතර දෙන්න ඕන සල්ලි අරකින් කාලය ශ්‍රමය සියල්ලම ඉතුරු කරගෙන කරන්න පුළුවන්. Therefore agricultural machinery are an important part of the agriculture sector. අනිවාර්යෙන් machinery කියන එක encourage කරන්නම ඕනේ දියුණු වෙන්න නම්. Right? That is again a one part. And irrigation and water management again. So encourage the use of efficient water management and moisture retention techniques to achieve high productivity in agriculture. Right? So in agriculture, irrigation and water management is again a very important section. Right? So we have to encourage the use of efficient wastewater management because we know that water is even though we consider it as a renewable source. Water කියලා කියන්නේ නැවත උත්පාදනය කරන්න පුළුවන් සම්පතක් තමයි. නමුත් it is very highly depleting. නැවත උත්පාදනය කරන වේගයට වඩා අපි භාවිතා කරන වේගය ඉතාම වැඩි. ඒ නිසා even though that is renewable, it is very rapidly depleting. අපිට ජලය නැවත නිෂ්පාදනය කරන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රමාණයට වඩා අපි භාවිතා කරන ප්‍රමාණයේ වේගය වැඩි වෙනකොට අපිට අපි දන්නවනේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දැන් ලෝකයේ මේ වෙනකොට ඉතාම සුළු ප්‍රමාණයක් තමයි ඉතුරුලා තියෙන්නේ consume කරන්න පුළුවන් විදිහේ water resource. Therefore, it is important because agriculture is one of the main sources of water pollution. Water pollution වල ප්‍රධානම කෙනෙක් තමයි contributor කෙනෙක් තමයි agriculture කියලා කියන්නේ. Therefore, conserving the existing water resources is important in sustainable agriculture development. I told you the term sustainable is important because we can increase the production somehow. Production කියන එක අපිට එක එක ක්‍රම වලින් ඕන හැටි වැඩි කරගන්න පුළුවන්. We can increase agriculture production by using lots of fertilizer and lots of unnecessary unhealthy stuff. But sustainability is the question, right? So you want to increase the production of the agriculture while balancing the environment. Water, land, we have balance කරන කමන් තමයි අපි agricultural production එක වැඩි කරගන්න ඕනේ. So prevent pollution of water from agriculture and industries, promote conservation of rainwater and groundwater. Then there is a not actually new, concepts of preserving rainwater. In the rainy period, there are underground tanks that you can store the rainwater, and so in the dry period you can use them to water the field. වෙහි කාලයේදී underground tanks වල rainwater එකතු කරලා තියාගෙන වෙලි කාලයේදී ඒව පාවිච්චි කරනවා. මේ වගේ techniques දැන් කොට පාවිච්චි වෙනවා. එතකොට මේ වගේ එක එක ක්‍රම වලින් we can always protect the water and maintain the sustainability of the agriculture. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat to ask. And the seventh one is land use. So අපි කලින් දැන් කතා කරා water ගැන කතා කරා, then we talked about fertilizer, pesticides, machinery and the land use. Right? Now again, land is a renewable resource, but depleting and polluting very high because of the agricultural activities. Therefore, adhere to the national land use policy in allocating land for cultivation purposes. Therefore, when you are allocating lands for cultivation purposes, we have to maintain we have to make sure that we are using the land effectively. Land because effectively පාවිච්චි කරනවාද කියන එක වැදගත් වෙනවා. So whenever you are using land for the agriculture, you have to make sure that you are not contributing to the land degradation or land pollution. Promote land conservation within watershed areas, especially in the watershed areas. It is very important to preserve the land so that water is also protected. Right? දැන් මේ පැතිවල කැලෑ එලිකිරීම වගේ දේවල් නිසා තමයි අතන watershed areas damage වුනහම ඊට පස්සේ වතුරත් නැහැ ඉඩමුත් නැහැ. යාලටම ගැටලු ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Compulsion of to obtain a permit for land use in certain in certain agricultural practices, you need to obtain a permit. Some agricultural practices will be in certain areas you have to obtain a permit from certain, like from the environmental authorities or Ministry of Environmental Ministry. You will have to obtain permission to do certain agricultural activities. So if you're if you're digging a big agro well, you may have to get the permission from the environmental central environmental authority. මධ්‍යම පරිසර අධිකාරියෙන් වගේ තැන්වලින් අපිට අවසර ගන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා, විශේෂයෙන් ලොකු කැණීම් කරනවා නම්, බගාල් ඉඳවල් හදනවා නම්, එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙනත් දේවල් වලට අපි පොළව කැණීම් කරනවා නම්, then of course you will have to get the relevant permission for the land use. Otherwise, you won't be able to do those things, because in certain areas the land pollution is very high. ඒ වගේම landslides ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නායයන් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ දේවල් prevent කරන්න තමයි agriculture කරන්න ඕනේ. කෘෂි කර්මාන්තය අත්‍යවශ්‍ය රටකට. නමුත් then again, while doing the agriculture, you have to maintain the sustainability. You have to protect the land as well. අපි කෘෂි කර්මාන්තය කරනවා කියලා රටේම තියෙන ඔක්කොම මේ ඉඩම් ටික විනාශ කරන කෘෂි කර්මාන්තය කරන්න අපිට බෑ. ඒක තමයි national agriculture policy එකක් තියෙන්නේ, to maintain that balance, right? So while attaining the productivity, high productivity, you have to make sure that you are preserving the land. Promote mixed cropping and intercropping to ensure this efficient use of the land. Mixed cropping and intercropping is also promoted to ensure the efficient use of land. What is mixed cropping? Mixed cropping තමයි මෙන්න මේ අතර මේ පේන image එකේ තියෙන mixed cropping තමයි. Mixed cropping means you are cultivating several crops together, right? Now, for example, when you are cultivating a coconut land, you may have seen that people are coconut වගේ එකක් වැවුවහම අපි දකිනවා ගොඩාක් space තියෙනවා. මොකද coconut වවන්නේ ගොඩාක් ලොකු spacing තියෙනවානේ. දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ coconut වල spacing කීයද? අඩි 9 ඔය වගේ ලොකු space එකක් තියෙනවානේ coconut වවනකොට. Now, between two coconut trees, you can have lots of land area. So the people tend to cultivate pineapple or pepper. Likewise, you have to get the maximum use of the land. Agricultural credit, again another important pillar of agriculture sector. For farmers, our farmers are not very rich. Farmers, most of the time we have smallholders. Therefore, we need to facilitate the financial levels of our farmers. Therefore, there are lots of facilities are given to strengthen the financial levels of our rural farmers. There are lots of microfinancing institutions, and there are lots of other, even the government banks are giving lots of credits and financial facilities. Then even Bank of Ceylon, People's Bank, they are having specific loan schemes for farmers. Then coconut growers are they are having lots of loans, like Kapruka loan scheme, specifically given designed for coconut growers. Likewise, there are lots of credit and facilities are given for the farmers, right? Then again, you have agricultural insurance. If something happens to the crop, there are mechanisms to protect the farmers. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ සියන දලඹු වගේ ඉන්සිඩන්ට් එකේදී අපේ ෆාමර්ස් වලට සිද්ධ වෙනවා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ පාඩුව දරා ගන්න. Introduce appropriate agricultural insurance schemes to protect the farmers from the risk associated with natural calamities. එතකොට if something destroys the crop, අපේ ෆාමර්ස් වලට මොකද වෙන්නේ? අපේ ඔය වගේ වුණාම පස්සේ දැන් ඉස්සර දැන් drought එකකට අහුවෙලා සම්පූර්ණ crop එක විනාශ වෙනවා. Farmers have no option, right? Sometimes farmers tend to commit suicide because they cannot The farmers ගොඩක් වෙලාට ණය වෙලා තමයි මේවා කරන්නේ. So if they cannot settle the loans, they try to commit suicide. To avoid that, there are agricultural insurance schemes so that we protect the farmers if something goes wrong naturally without the control of the farmers. Farmer control එක නැතුව මොන හරි දෙයක් සිද්ධ වුණොත් then there are mechanisms, insurance mechanisms to protect the farmers. Agricultural research. This is again very important. There are 7 agricultural faculties in Sri Lanka in 7 universities. 7 or 8, I suppose. So they all are conducting agricultural research. Other than that, there are separate agricultural research institutions. For example, Department of Agriculture, Rice Research and Development, RRDI, තියෙනවා බතලේගොඩ, ඊළඟට Fruit Crop Research Institution තියෙනවා හොරණ. Likewise, we are having potato research, floricultural research institutions. Likewise, we are having lots of research and development institutions for separate food crops. So it is very important. The government is allocating necessary funds for the development of these research institutions and the universities because we need new knowledge. Right? Agricultural capital, alut knowledge atyavashyai. We don't know, we are going behind. Biotechnology, GIS systems, nanotechnology, we are doing lots of research and experiments on different new technologies. Right? So the role of the agricultural policy is to allocate funds for these agricultural research. Marketing, again, as I told you earlier, agriculture is not just about cultivation or farming. Agriculture is farming right? The farming cultivation part. When you talk about agriculture, it talks about how you are going to take the food, take the seed to the table. Consumer table agriculture. So when you're talking about agriculture, you have to think beyond the farming. The farmers there are lots of supermarkets, retailers, wholesalers. Likewise, there are lots of people who are involved in the process of marketing of agricultural products, right? So we have to, the role of the agricultural policy is to ensure that the proper functioning of the agricultural supply chain. Right? So encourage farmers to produce high quality primary products, and also these products has to reach the consumer at the very right time. Then උදාහරණයක් විදිහට නූරෙලියේ වැවෙන අල කොහොමද අපේ මේ කලම්බු වලට නැත්නම් අපි ඉන්න පැත්තට එන්නේ. එතකොට මේක this is marketing, right? So they come to the අඹුල්ල. ඒක නිසා තමයි අත්‍තරම රජයෙන් පිටවල තියෙනවා මොනවාද ආර්ථික මධ්‍යස්ථාන එළවලු වලට ওই දඹුල්ල වේයන්ගොඩ ඒ වගේ අපේ රටේ ආර්ථික මධ්‍යස්ථාන 13ක් තියෙනවා. Designated economic centers කියලා. ඔව් ඒක තමයි 13ක් තියෙනවා. right? So සමහර ඒවා පැඩි වලටම ස්පෙસિෆික් ඒවා තියෙනවා, සමහර ඒවා ভেජිටබල් ඒ වගේ වෙනම තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේවේ කාර්යභාරය තමයි ඔය රටේ හැමතැනම තියෙන එළවලු, පළතුරු, සහල් මේ සියලුම දේවල් එක තැනකට එක තැන් වලට එකතු කරලා අනිකුත් පැති වලට බෙදා හරිනවා. So that is also part of the marketing. Right? So the agriculture policy කියන එක මම එකයි කිව්වේ. මෙතනදී අපි අර කතා කරන්නේ හැම වෙලාවකම crop එකක් හිටවල ඒකට පූර දාලා ඒක හොඳට හදාගන්න එක විතරක් නෙවෙයි. Right? කෘෂි කර්මාන්තය කියලා කියන්නේ it has more than that. We have to think about the marketing. නැත්නම් අපි කොච්චර වැව්වත් වැඩක් නැහැ. දැන් ඒක නෙවෙයි සමහර කාලවල අපේ වට්ටක්ක ගොවි වට්ටක් වලට මොකේ කාලේ ගිනි තිබ්බා. ඇයි? Because of a lack of a proper marketing system. Marketing system එකේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න නිසා. අර හොඳ marketing system එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි අද වෙනකොට දැන් පහුගිය කාලෙම දැන් ටිකක් එළවලු ගණන් අඩුයි. නමුත් පහුගිය කාලේ අපි අධික මිලක් ගෙවනවා එළවලු. හරි කැරට් කිලෝ එක ඊයද රුපියල් 500ට විතර ගිහින් තිබුණා පහුගිය කාලේ. නමුත් ඇත්තටම නෝරෙලි ෆාම කෙනෙක්ගෙන් අහුව මේ මනුස්සයට රුපියල් 100ටත් විකුණ ගන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ. ඇයි?
වෙරිෆිකේෂන් වලට යන්න පුළුවන්.
ඔව් අනිවාර්යෙන්. එතකොට that is because of the problems in the marketing system, right? So establishment of a proper marketing system is also one of the roles of the agricultural policy. So not only the local marketing විතරක් නෙමෙයි රට ඇතුලේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි රටෙන් පිට උනා ගෙනියන එකත් agricultural policy එකේ කොටස. Right? So facilitating and promoting all forms of agro-based exports. That is why we have Export Development Board. ගිහිල්ලා බලන්න වෙලාවල් තියෙනලාට Export Development Board එකේ website එකට ගිහිල්ලා බලන්න. So there are lots of institutions are there, agriculture related institutions are there to support our farmers and producers to promote the exportation of our agricultural crops. Right? So there are not only the state sector, but also there are lots of private sector organizations who are involved in the exportation of agricultural fruits, vegetables, paddy limited export. We are exporting lots of fruits and vegetables, and especially spices. We export agricultural crops. We cinnamon right? We are the number one quality wise quantity wise quality wise we are the best exporters of those export agricultural crops as well. So that is also comes under the purview of the national agricultural policy. මට කියන්න ඕනේ මේ ටික ඉන්නකොටම අර මම කලින් කිව්වා වගේ agriculture කියන එකේදී අපි අර කතා කරන්නේ fertilizer pesticides water land කියන ටික විතරක් නෙමෙයි. එතනින් එහාට ගියපු ලොකු කාර්යභාරයක් තියෙනවා ලංකාවේ කෘෂිකාර්ය වෙතකත්තියට නැත්නම් කෘෂිකර්ම අමාත්‍යාංශයට ඒ හැම දෙයක් ගැනම බලන්න තියෙනවා. Right? So that is the purpose of national agricultural policy that I did not explain all those things. I will upload the contents to the LMS, so I will share with Dr. Guruge, then she will share it with you. I will upload the content to the LMS probably after the lecture. Then you can go through this. So that is all about the national agricultural policy. So we took about 2 hours, and now I will give you a small group work to do. Right? Now, before doing that one, let me show what we are going to do today. We'll do this one in the break time, right? Break time make now I will sorry, it's a little bit noise from my end, students. Right. I will upload this to the chat box as well. I make a chat and then of course you can download it and chat document phone computer document I will drop it into the chat. Right? So if someone can download it, you can use WhatsApp groups and share and then make a chat. Right now, this is an 8-page document. Right? So I will break you into 4 groups. Make a document. Group breakout rooms. Your task is to read this document. Make national agriculture sector policy changes or way forward. So your task is to read this document. Every group I will assign 2 pages. Right? Take a group for every group. I will assign 2 pages for the first and then you will have to give a small summary. It was class you will have to give a small summary about the what you have read. Right? You can read 2 pages, get together as a group, read 2 pages, and you have to do a small 1 or 2 minutes summary. Class as a summary, right? Make as a summary. You can do it. Are you clear? Okay. So let me build breakout rooms, and you will be assigned to the rooms automatically. When you get the notification, please go into the room, and then I will come to each room and let you know what to do. Right? room already. So in a minute, you will be asked to join a room. So go and join the room. Then we can break. Right? Already break it. May room all then join them. Respective breakout rooms. Can you hear me all? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Right. Thank you. So I know that it is you haven't had lots of time to read all the work, but still I think you may have slightly at least gone through the document that I've shared. So shall we start summarizing it? Don't take it as a presentation or anything. I know that you didn't have much time to read, and it's even though it is 2 pages, there are a lot to read actually. So don't worry that even if you haven't had a chance to read, I will upload the content to the LMS and then you can have a read. So the document is important because that has been written by Professor Kalegama, who is one of the professors attached to the University of Viradhini Agriculture Faculty, and he is also one of the key researchers in the field of agriculture economics in Sri Lanka. Professor Kalegama. So Saman Kalegama is someone who is highly contributing to the development of national agriculture policy as well. So he is a very competent person and skilled person who knows about the agricultural policy, right? So this is a document that has been published in a speech actually. One of his speeches he made at a conference, and at the conference of I think it is said that 10th annual research forum of the Sri Lanka agriculture economics. So I don't know whether you know Professor Kalegama, but yeah, he's one of the pioneers in the agriculture economics research in the country. So his viewpoints regarding the agricultural policy changes are shared here. Okay, so that being said, I think it's time for us to start discussing this one. We'll just zoom it out so that we can see a little bit. In the first 2 pages, actually, we don't have much of the information regarding. I think it's just about some historical aspects and all that. And there is a discussion, introduction to Professor Kalegama, and that he is also the executive director of IPS Institute of Policy Studies, Sri Lanka. Okay, so can anyone from group number 1, can anyone, 1 or 2 members, I think, I hope that you have already discussed who's going to do the summarization, can do a quick summary of what the document said. The others, so the purpose of this activity so that not everyone has chance to read all the 8 pages within this half an hour. So other people have read it for you and they will summarize it. So by that we are all able to get the ideas of all the 8 pages. අනිත් එක වලින් කියලා දෙනවා වගේ එකක් තමයි මෙතෙන්ද මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ඒක නිසා මේකම එහෙම ඇසිටිස් කියවන එක නෙමෙයි. ඔයාලගේ වචනේ මොකද්ද මේකේ තිබ්බේ, මොකද්ද මේක ගැන මේ ඔයාලා කියපු විතර දෙකේ සමරි එක පුංචි වාක්‍ය 3-4කින් කිව්වා නම් ඒ ඇති. So English is preferred. Preferred language is English, but if it is difficult, if you won't, I mean, encourage කරන්නේ you can include some of the Sinhalese word if it is difficult, but English is the preferred language. Can we start? Group number 1. Can we start, students? Group number 1. Who were in the group number 1? I know there are about 10 to 15 members were there. Around each group, there were about 10 to 15 students. Did you discuss among yourself? What about group number 2 then? No one is going to talk here? Group number 3?
Yes, ma'am. Group number 3.
You're ready with the group number 3. Okay, hold on. Who is your Hiru Shalini? Is that?
Yes, ma'am. I am also ready, ma'am.
You're from group number 3, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you both are from group number 3. Hold on a moment. Because this has to have a flow. We should start from group number 1 and 2. What about group number 1 and 2 again? I'm asking. I think half of you have left the class during the break. Okay, so when you assign a work, you have to do it, right? Otherwise, now we can start from the page number 5 and 6, but there is no point because we need somebody from first 2 groups. Anyone who were in the group number 1 and 2? Just to tell me at least what happened. No one talked, right?
Madam, I can read.
From which group you are, my dear?
Group number 2.
2. Okay, thank you. What about group number 1 then? Okay, so, okay, anyway, without wasting everyone else's time, we'll start with group number 2. Very sorry, feel sorry for the students who are not talking actually, because unlike our undergraduates, this is a paid course, right? That you must remember. So you are wasting if you are not like doing this one actively, that means you're wasting your money or your parents' money, or so it's up to you to decide. Okay, anyway, so we'll start with group number 2. Yes, you can start summarizing page number 3 and 4 actually.
The agriculture sector in Sri Lanka has evolved over time with 9 lakh hectares of paddy land, primarily in the dry zone, being cultivated by farmers for food security. Agriculture over 1 million hectares are under plantation crops like tea, rubber, and coconut, with a significant share of coconut production now consumed locally. Over 1 million hectares under home gardens, which can cater to food security and export income. The agriculture sector is divided into 4 major subsectors: food security, plantation, crops, multi-product products, home agriculture, and livestock. The role of agriculture in the national economy is often assessed using sectoral contribution to GDP, but this can create a distorted picture. The primary industry ministry has taken a positive initiative to focus on value chains, which is relatively new in Sri Lanka agriculture policy. However, these do not reflect livelihood, cultural and social value by agriculture, especially in rural societies.
ප්‍රමාණයක් තියාගෙන වැඩි ප්‍රමාණය තමයි ගොඩක් අයට අපි විකුණන්නේ. Because of that, our total agricultural output is what comes to the market. අපේ රටේ අපි වවන අපි ෆාමර්ස්ලා වවන සියලුම ක්‍රොප් එක මාකට් එකට එන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් මේ මාකට් එකට යන ප්‍රමාණයෙන් තමයි අපේ ඔය GDP එකට contribution එක create වෙන්නේ, හැදෙන්නේ, calculate වෙන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා සමහර අවස්ථාවවලදී අපේ contribution එක අඩුයි කියලා කිව්වට ජාතික නිෂ්පාදිතයට අපි ඇත්තටම ඊට වඩා හුඟක් නිෂ්පාදනය කරනවා. The problem is that they do not come to the market because we are domestically consume them. දැන් අපි යනවා අපි දන්නවා අපි ගෙවල් we usually tend to cultivate at least some fruits, some vegetables, and some people have rice, paddy. ඒ වගේ we tend to cultivate our own food. So whatever that is not there is we are going to purchase. Right? Now because of that, our agriculture contribution to the domestic production is not the actual figure. හරිම හරි වැලියු එක නෙමෙයි එන්නේ මොකද අපි සියලුම දේවල් මාකට් එකට දාන්නේ නැහැ අපි මේකෙන් කොටසක් අපි ගෙවල් මෙතන වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් අපි දැන් කොකනට් ගත්තාම we when we have a couple of coconut trees at home we don't usually buy coconut. Right? ඒ නිසා ඒ වගේ issues තියෙනවා අපේ agriculture sector එකේ even though we are continuously saying that our agricultural production is depleting, there are parts of the production that is not coming to the market. Right? Okay. So that is when we're making the agricultural policies, when we are calculating the economics or the statistics, that is also has to be taken into the consideration. Okay, shall we go to the group number 3 then? Who's going to summarize page number 5 and 6? Okay, good. Thank you. That's a good summary of the challenges that has been faced by the agriculture sector in Sri Lanka, as you very correctly mentioned. Low cost of production, low productivity, and so there are lots of issues that has been now based on these issues. Actually, the government is actually trying to develop the agricultural policy so that they can address these issues satisfactorily, right? So I think this chapter again discusses some specific issues related to tea sector and the rubber and stuff like that, but we don't have to go to into that details because this is just an, you had only about 20 minutes or so to read the document. So I think you have done a good job in summarizing those 2 pages. Okay, so without uh, looking for the time, we'll go to the last one, 7, 8 pages. Group number 4, page number 7 and 8.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Facing imminent threat of climate change. IPS expert for the Climate Change Secretariat of the Mahaveli Development and Environment Ministry. It was developed through an exhaustive 9 areas. Food security, biodiversity, major sector of national economy. Mahaveli Development Project can promote the Divi Naguma. Farmers' short-term expectation and long-term expectations. Repercussion on in the agriculture sector can identify the byproducts or unintended ill effect of past policies. Many agriculture policies appears to have focused on the production layer of the value chain, where a large number of small farmers are occupied. Some policies have gone to the extent of promoting the farmer interest even at the expense of the other important actors in value chain. Therefore, taking the value chains as a whole is a very important to formulating policies in agriculture. A positive development is observed in the initiative by the primary industries, Ministry for the Development of Agriculture Value Chains. The most challenging task in agriculture development policy today is to develop sustainable value chain is a socially inclusive and pro-poor manner that improve the situation of small farmers. Avoiding above pitfall should form the key principles of an integrated strategy to bring Sri Lanka's agriculture sector into a position of strength.
Okay, right. Good, but yes, that you have read the 2 pages. That's good. Is it a solo effort you just did by yourself, or did your group members have also supported you? Okay. Anyway, I hope that it is. I don't know. It's okay. Anyway, you good effort. So it is actually discussing about more of the solutions that have been taken to overcome the so-called challenges that were discussed in the first 2 pages. So as solutions like the Vinaguma program and what else? There were some agriculture price support policies have been formulated in order to avoid the middleman exploitation of the farmers and the consumers. Likewise, So in the earlier 2 pages, we identified what are the challenges or the difficulties that are faced by the farmers or in the agriculture sector in particular. And the last 2 pages has given the suggestions and the actions that have been taken by the government, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Primary Industries, in order to overcome those challenges as well as to enhance the agricultural supply chain. So we don't have time to talk about the agricultural supply chain here today. I'm not sure whether you have a separate lesson for that one, but anyway. So it's I think it's a good article. So please do read this one. I will upload this one also to the LMS. So please do have a read of it. Then you will understand the practicality, because in the theory two presentations that I'm doing today, we've mainly talked about the agricultural policy, and in the next one I'm going to talk about the national plantation industries policy. So we are talking about the theory here, but Professor Kalegama's speech here, he mainly focuses on the practical aspects and how actually the things are done and being doing in Sri Lanka. Okay, so after that, we are mainly focusing on this one. Then this is going to be the last section for today. So National Plantation Industry Policy, or we call it in short in PIP framework. Now we earlier learned that about the National Agriculture Policy. The Ministry of Agriculture is the main responsible body for the National Agricultural Policy, and it included like floriculture and export agricultural crops and related policies. But in here, because of the importance of the sector, we have taken these tea, rubber, coconut, and palm oil. You can see in this picture. But in this one, we are going to mainly talk about tea and rubber, because coconut is again not exactly covered in this one, because for coconut, they have coconut cultivation, various different coconut managing authorities. But anyway, we are going to talk about general policies that is related to the plantation sector in Sri Lanka, right? So in Sri Lanka, the plantation sector comprises of traditional triplets. අපි හැමෝම දන්නවා plantation sector එකම පුංචි කාලේ ඉඳලා අපි දන්නවා තේ රබර් පොල්. ඒක තමයි ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන්ම. Now you, I think, as people who are doing the diploma in plantation management, right? Agriculture and plantation management. By now you know what are the key plantation crops in the country and how important these things are to the agriculture, the economy of the country. So other than that, there are sugar cane and oil palm, which is quite little new, not quite new actually, little new to the Sri Lankan plantation sector. And there are lots of, I think you have heard lots of, challenges, pros and cons of discussing oil palm and palm crop එක ලංකාවට ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කරලා තියෙනවා. දැනට මේකට ගොඩක් ඇතිලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් තවමත් මිනිස්සු අතර ඒක මතභේදාත්මක තත්ත්ව තියෙනවා. කොහොමද මේක කොච්චර සූටබල්ද කියලා. මම හිතන්නේ ඒවා ඔයාලට ප්ලාන්ටේෂන් ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකේ ඒ ලෙක්චර්ස් වලදී කවර් කරනවා ඇති. And cashew and palmyra. So these are the crops that are mainly in the plantation sector of Sri Lanka. So the main thrust of the plantation sector is to increase the productivity and the profitability of both corporate and smallholding sector of the plantation industry through product market integration, agro-based industries aiming at a long-term sustainability. Right. So the importance in the plantation sector is that, So the plantation sector is mainly comprised of two types of, I would say, growers or the cultivators, farmers. One is the corporate sector and the other one is the small holding sector. The cooperative sector is under the plantation companies, Whereas smallholding sector are the individual farmers, small scale farmers who are having like 1 acres or 1.5 acres, half acres of land, of cultivated land. But in corporate sector, we have plantation companies like Butterfly Plantation, Damro Plantations, and even plantation companies. So those are under the those are considered as the corporate sector. Companies willing management plantations with here. Okay, so there is a question. I will take this one here. Madam, can we think whether tea, rubber, coconut are plantation and export crops? Yes, these are plantation as well as export crops, but මං ඔයාලට ඔය confusion එක තියෙන අර මං කලින් කතා කරපු EACs ගැන එක්කලා export agricultural crops කියප එකත් එක්කලා. So that by definition there is a separate set of crops as export agricultural crops, as I told you earlier, cinnamon, pepper, cardamom, those type of crops are identified separately as export agricultural crops. They are not grown as plantations. That is the concern, right? Now, in comparison to that, tea, rubber, and coconut palm, sugarcane, plantations with the as a plantation, they are cultivated. Then you may have like 1 or 2 but you still contribute to the agriculture sector. Right? Plantation plantation crops identified those are identified as export agricultural crops. But of course, plantation crops again are exported a lot. Actually, tea can be main foreign exchange tea tea is definitely exported and brings lots and lots of foreign revenue to our country through tea plantation. Again, the tea plantation crops are, yes, tea, rubber, coconut are plantation crops that are exportable, but does not comes under the purview of export agricultural crops. Those are separate types of crops. Right? Export agricultural අපනයන කෘෂි භෝග කියලා අපි කියනකොට ඒවා අවුරු වෙනම සෙට් එකක්. right? අපනයන භෝග අපනයන කෘෂි භෝග කියන්නේ ඒකට දෙකක් විදිහට තමයි උතන ගන්නේ. I hope it is clear. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට අනිවාර්යෙන්ම මම හිතනවා EACs ගැන lessons කරාවි කියලා. ඒක අනිවාර්යෙන් plantation department එකේ නම් කරනවා. මම හිතන්නේ undergraduate නම් කරනවා. ඔයාලටත් කරනවා ඇති. එතකොට ඔයාලට වැඩිදුර විස්තර දැනගන්න ලැබෙවි. ඔය කුරුඳු, ගම්මිරිස්, බුලත්, සාදික්කා, වසාවාසි වගේ දේවල් ගැන වැඩිපුර විස්තර දැනගන්න පුළුවන්.
Madam, what is the cardamom?
Cardamom කියන්නේ සාදි මොනවාද? එනසාල් කියන්නේ සිංහලේ.
ඒකෙන් start කරන මොකක් හරි PDF.
මට ඔයාලා කියන එක පැහැදිලි වුණේ නැහැ දරුවෝ.
Cardamom.
Cardamom නෙමෙයි, cardamom C A C. Cardamom. ඔයාලා මන් දන්නේ එනසාල් නේද සිංහලෙන් එනසාල් නෙමෙයි මොනවද ඒකට කියන්නේ තමයි නේද? කවුරුද දන්නවද ඒක?
Karadamungu.
නෑ. Karadamungu is cloves. Cloves is different.
Karamu. Karamu.
Clove is karabu. Then Karadamungu, yes, yes. Karadamungu. Right. Oh, clove කියන්නේ karabu. Karadamungu, yes. Karadamungu තමයි. මගේ ලයින් එක ඔයාලට ඇහෙනවද මාව පැහැදිලි ළමයි? I hear some echo.
Yes. Can.
Okay, right. Is that all? Is that clear? Karadamungu tamai, that you are correct, right?
Yeah.
I forgot the Sinhalese name. Sorry about that. That is Karadamungu. එනසාල් කියලා කියනවා මං හිතන්නේ. මං දන්නේ ඒක හරියටම එනසාල් කියලා කියනවා වෙන්න ඕන.
That's okay, ma'am.
Karadamungu is the better term. Good. Right. So the plantation sector, it is privately owned, was nationalized in mid-1970s. Then we have these plantation companies that are controlled under two corporations. One is Janata Estate Development Board and the other one is Sri Lanka Plantation Corporation. මේ දෙක ඇතුළේ තමයි දැනට තියෙන plantation companies ටික govern වෙන්නේ. That is the governing body, but this can be like privately and publicly owned. ඒ වගේ governance system එකක් තමයි යන්නේ. But there are 20 regional plantation companies. So they are on a lease on a 53-year lease එකක් තියෙන government එකට. මේ structures ගන්න නම් ඔයාලට එච්චරම තේරුමක් නැහැ. නමුත් දැනගන්න ඕන දේ තමයි එකම දේ තමයි there is small holding sector as well as there is corporate sector. Corporate sector එකකුයි small holding sector එකයි කියලා දෙකක් තියෙනවා. මේ දෙක තමයි ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් plantation sector එකේ ඉන්න owners ලා companies වල. Sorry, plantations වලට. Now in all these crop sectors, like for tea, for rubber, for coconut, all these crop sectors, we have a small holding sector. Rubber smallholders, tea smallholders, coconut smallholders, likewise smallholders කෙනෙක්ගේ ලොකු බරපතල තේරුමක් නැහැ ළමයි. Smallholder in the sense a farmer who is having about 1 acre.
සුළු පරිමාණ
farmers, so they are not part of those bigger plantation companies. But again, there are quite a few number of smallholders, small farmers, and their contribution to the total plantation production is again very high. Right? ඒක නිසා ඒගොල්ලෝ සුළු පරිමාණයි කියලා අපිට අත්හැරලා දාන්න උවමනාවක් නැහැ. එහෙම අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝගේ contribution එක ඉතාම ඉහළයි total plantation crop production එකට. Therefore, there are lots of authorities, lots of government institutions are there to support them, to facilitate their functions, like by providing fertilizer subsidies, by facilitating their marketing activities. So there are lots of places, lots of government authorities to support these smallholders. So one of such organization is tea smallholding sector. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි කියන tea smallholding authority, TSHTA කියලා අපි කියනවා මේකට. Tea smallholding authority is one such institute that is been set to support the tea smallholding sector, but they are playing a very critical role in the tea exportation as well as production. Right. Now, tea, rubber, sugar, cashew, and palmyra subsectors are functioned through establishing various research institutions and other development and market-oriented organizations. And rice, we have rice research institution, fruit crop research institution. There are lots of other regional agricultural research institutions, like there's one in Mahadura, there's one in Punagal, ඒවගේ ගොඩක් ඒවා තියෙනවා. ඒතර ඒ වගේ for specific plantation crops also we are having separate research institutions and other marketing platforms, like TRI, tea research institution, rubber research institutions, sugarcane research institute, coconut research institute. Likewise, they are specifically designed to conduct research activities in relation to the specific plantation crops. And also there is paddy market, sorry, not the paddy market, paddy kyote and agriculture pattern, palmyra development board, coconut development board, coconut authority. So cashew corporation, rubber development department. Likewise, there are different departments and authorities and boards are also there to facilitate the marketing aspects and some of the research and development aspects of these plantation crops. Now you can see how important this plantation sector to the Sri Lankan economy, as the government has established multiple organizations and institutions, authorities, boards to support the plantation sector. Right? Right. Now, issues faced by the plantation sector. Now, this is very critical. Now, in general, in common to all the plantation crops, the main issues faced by the plantation sector is the low productivity and high production cost. Right? Now, that results in less profitability in the plantation sector. Right? So this is one of the key issues that common issues for tea, rubber, coconut, sugarcane. For all these ones, these issues are quite common. Low productivity because we don't we don't have the technology, we are not using quality fertilizer, we are not using proper land preparation techniques or whatsoever, we are decreasing the productivity of the plantation crops, and also high production cost. Our labor costs are very high. We need lots of labor for the plantation sector, and we are facing lots of higher cost of labor. We have to pay very high rates of wages to the workers, and also our fertilizers are expensive, and all the other infrastructure are expensive. It is going to be very expensive for the plantation sector. And also another issue faced by the plantation sector is the banking system does not provide long-term financing for long-term investments. Especially this is a problem for the small holders. This is not a very big deal for the large-scale companies or the corporate sector. But for small holders, has become a bigger problem because the banks are reluctant to give them enough financial facilities. Looming labor shortages. Now, labor outmigration is one of the critical issues faced by the plantation sector. Why? Because give me a minute, students. Right. So we'll take a minute to talk about labor outmigration issue. Labor outmigration is one of the biggest issues faced by the plantation sector in Sri Lanka. What is the meaning of outmigration? Outmigration in the sense, now people who work in the plantation sector are not willing to continue working there, and instead they are trying to go away from the sector and trying to find some different jobs in different other sectors. Then out migration come, this does not mean that they are going out of the country. This means that, say for example, people who work in the plantation tea sector, tea pluckers, they really, I mean, we have done actually a couple of researchers with these plantation workers, and we got to know that they are not willing to work in the plantation sector because of the, ඉස්සර වගේ කියන්නේ දලු කඩන කෙනෙකුට තියෙන රැකියාවේ සුරක්ෂිතභාවය, ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන පිළිගැනීම, ඔය වගේ ප්‍රශ්න නිසා they really don't want to stay in the plantation sector and they would rather go out and work for ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඔය කට්ටිය යනවා මොනවාද apparel sector එකේ garment වල වැඩට යනවා, කඩවල් වල වැඩට යනවා. ඒ වගේ they are trying to find more jobs in some urban areas, because they don't feel like staying in that particular job for a longer time. And also, they don't like their children to work as estate workers in the future. Then when we do researches with those people, they say that, okay, we never want our children to become tea pluckers. Ape babal, ape laman, lokela dalu katanwa dakinda, egolu kamati naha. ළමයි එතනින් එළියට ගිහිල්ලා අඩු ගානේ garment එකක හරි රස්සාවකට යනවා දකින්න. So that is one of the biggest concerns because tea, ඒ වගේම rubber ගත්තහම they are very highly dependent on the manpower. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගන්න rubber කිරි කපන්න, tea දළු නෙලන්න, මේවට ඔක්කොටම ඉතාම විශාල වශයෙන් අපිට manpower අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. So labor has become a very critical issue in the plantation sector because people are trying to go away with the education. And again, now then, unlike those days, now children who are the parent, the Maupiova Geneme, Daru, then they go to universities, when they are learning and when they are getting highly educated, they don't want to work as estate workers anymore. If you take a part of the when you become a graduate, you don't want to become a tea plucker. Right? That is obvious. So you just want to work for somewhere else. And then the estate sector is the one that is facing the difficulty. ඒ වගේ බොහොම practical issues තියෙනවා විශේෂයෙන් තේ සහ rubber sectors දෙකේ මේ labor කියන එක තාම බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක්. ඒකයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ දකින නිවුස් වලට මම ගොඩක් වෙලාට කියනවා අවම වැටුපක් තීරණය කරලා තියෙනවා ගොඩක් දේවල් කරනවා මේ සෙට් එක රැක ගන්න. But still they are facing the difficulties. Voluntary unemployment and aging workforce stemming from poor living and working conditions of the state workers. State workers, there is another big issue is the alcoholism. A poor living condition. In the state sector, if you have experiences, I don't know whether any of you are from the state sector, but if you have seen those people, alcoholism and poor financial management is a big issue. At the end of the day, most of them consume alcohol, even male and female, both they consume alcohol, and their living conditions are very poor. Because of also those things, they don't really want to work in the estate sector and they really want to go out of the estate sector and finding some easier jobs. They just want to find some more easy money. They want to go for easy ways of earning money. And also there are global, regional and domestic challenges. Like for example, these economic crises. Now this economic crisis and oil price increases. These things are not only for Sri Lanka. Right? Now we know that our oil prices are very high. It is not just for us. It is a global problem. තෙල් මිල වැඩි වෙනවා කියන එක ලෝකේ හැමෝම මුහුණ දෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක්. එතකොට ඒක අපිට ගොඩක් වැඩිපුර දැනෙනවා අපි දුප්පත් රටවල් හින්දා. එතකොට මේ ප්‍රශ්න අනිවාර්යෙන්ම අපේ plantation industry එකේ තියෙන energy crisis. Now the bills of electricity bills are extremely high. Now the companies are paying very high amounts of electricity bills and other infrastructure for everything. They are paying very high charges. Therefore, all these domestic, regional, global challenges, ඒ වගේම දැන් ගත්තොත් එයා ෆෙයා හරිම වැඩි. ඔයිල් ප්‍රයිස් එක වැඩි වුණත් එක්කලා ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා එයා ටිකට්ස් වල prices දැන් 10 පාරස් තුනකින් වැඩිලා තියෙනවා. ඒතර අපි එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරනකොටත් ඒ වගේ. When we are exporting our tea and rubber and other products to other countries, those are also affected by higher air and sea freight charges. So all those things are becoming problems for our estate sector. Right? So these are general problems for all the sectors in the plantation sector. You can name all the crops in the plantation sector: tea, rubber, palm, sugarcane, coconut. Right. So now we'll go towards the plantation sector development policy, NPIP, National Plantation Industry Policy. And before doing that, when you go to the website of the website of the plantation industry, then you will find these vision and mission for the plantation industry. Okay? So these are the vision and mission of the National Plantation Industry Policy. Right? So I'm not going to explain each of these. You can just read these things. Anyway, the objective is to what? Objective is to enhance the profitability and the productivity of the plantation sector through sustainable management. Yes, you have to increase the productivity. Yes, you have to increase the profitability of the plantation sector, but you have to be sustainable. Sustainable in the sense, you have to be very careful about the environment. You have to be very careful about the society. You have to be very careful about the economy. You have to balance all those things while improving the productivity and the profitability of these industries. Okay. Strategic policy mix on the plantation sector. Now, these are the policies. Then, unlike in the agriculture policy, it has a policy mix. So these are the policy statements. Statements including pesticides, fertilizer. Now these are the things that we are going to discuss here, right? According to the NPIP. NPIP subsections අපිට කතා කරන්න අපි අතනදී අර කතා කරේ insurance, agriculture credit, agriculture research and development, same thing, right? ගොඩක් සමානයි අතර මෙතන තියෙන දේවලුත් එතරම් කිසිම වෙනසක් නැහැ. මෙතන තියෙන ඒවත් අර වගේම තමයි. නමුත් චුට්ටක් අර වෙනස් වචන වලින් ලියලා තියෙනවා. එච්චර ඇත්තට වෙනස් වෙන්නේ, but more or less similar to the national agricultural policy. Okay. So if you have questions, please ask. Right? I know this is not a very interesting time or not a very interesting topic to discuss. මේ වෙලාවේ මේ වගේ topic එකක් කතා කරන එක that is extremely boring. I know that, but please bear with me. I don't have any other option but to just to discuss these things. ඊට වඩා මේක attractive කරන්න ක්‍රමයකුත් නැහැ, because this is just theory that we don't have any calculations or anything to do. So into the policy mix, the first one is the institutional reform policy. Make a policy on right? Okay. Institutional reform policy. So in relation to the plantation sector, the problem is to strengthen the decision making in the plantation sector. Now, the government has realized that there are issues in relation to the decision making of the plantation sector, and thereby they needed to establish a policy analysis circle within the Ministry of Plantation Industries to formulate, analyze, evaluate, and disseminate the policy mixtures relevant to the sector. Now, this policy analysis circle is established within the Ministry of Plantation Industries with the involvement of relevant experts in the sector. Lecturers, again, policy makers, researchers, company owners, right? So this policy analysis circle, the responsibility of this group of people is to establish, formulate, and analyze the policies that is relevant to the plantation sector. Now you can see these are not vertical policies; these are horizontal policies, and developed by with the collaboration of different policy classification again follow policies people get together and develop these policies for the betterment of the plantation sector, right? And the second one is policy on provision of product and market intelligence. Now, it's all about technology these days, right? So information and telecommunication technology is, that we are living in an information society, we say these days, technological society. So plantation sector is no exception, right? So we have to rely on the technology. We have to build linkages with international buyers and sellers, international partners, and we have to make links with other stakeholders in other countries. That is where the information technology comes into the hand, because we cannot really rely on local markets, especially when it's come to the plantation crops. Plantation industry ke apni local market eකට විතරක් tea හදලා rubber හදලා serve කරලා survive වෙන්න බෑ. We have to definitely go beyond our local market. ලංකාවේ market එක දැන් අපි පැඩි නම් හදාගත්තොත් අපි කේට කරන්නේ අපේ local market එක. අපේ රටේ තියෙන ආහාර ටික හදාගන්න එක තමයි අපේ aim. But plantation crops ගත්තාම there is a different story. You are going beyond the boundaries of the country. Therefore, you will need information and telecommunication technology so that you build links with the global community. How they buyers communicate, we need that market intelligence. Research and development policy. So the issue is, we know that low productivity and profitability of the plantation crops is the issue, and in order to avoid that, the government is planning to or provisioning to strengthen the research and development activities in agriculture, in the plantation sector, right? So the strategy is to develop a target-oriented, demand-driven R&D policy framework through that policy circle, right? So research and development policy, it is also aimed to facilitate the research activities that are conducted in universities. Like our university, we are conducting lots of research activities related to the plantation sector. And not only that, all those research institutions like TRI, RRI, CRI, they also conduct lots of research activities, and all these things are supported by the NPIP, National Policy in Plantation Industry Policy. Human Resource Managed Development Policy, HRD and Human Resource Development. So the issue is out migration. Issue is out migration and aging population. So we know we have discussed what is out migration, right? Labor out migration. So they tend to go away from the plantation industry, finding jobs much easier, less physically demanding jobs in the other sector. Aging population, this is a common issue in around the world, that our population is aging. Then population statistics, population pyramids කතා කරන්න ඇති කියලා මම හිතනවා.
Yes.
So when you talk about a population pyramid, you are drawing a population pyramid in relation to the age. අපි age එකත් එක්ක තමයි population pyramid අඳින්නේ. When you draw population pyramid, you in the recent years, you are able to see that in comparison to the youngsters, අවුරුදු එකේ ඉඳන් 10 ඉඳලා 35 වගේ වයස් පරතරවල ඉන්න කට්ටියට වඩා අවුරුදු 55ට වඩා වැඩි කට්ටිය වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒක තමයි සාමාන්‍ය මේ ලෝකේ දැන් මේ දවස්වල තියෙන ට්‍රෙන්ඩ් එක. Aging population is increasing. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාලා දැන් population ගැන කතා කරනවා මම දන්නේ නැහැ whether you have talked about those baby boomers වගේ එක eras තියෙන population වල කතා කරනවා. ඒතර සාමාන්‍යයෙන් 1940 ගණන් ඉඳලා 60 ගණන් 70 ගණන් වගේ වෙනකම් 50 ගණන් වල අපි කියනවා baby boomers කියලා. ඒ කාලේ. ඒ කියන්නේ world war එකෙන් පස්සේ ලෝකයේ දෙවනි ලෝක යුද්ධයෙන් පස්සේ ලෝකේ ගොඩ කාලයක් අර parents ලා බබ්බු හදන්න නැතුව ඉඳලා එක ප්‍රශ්න නිසා ඊට පස්සේ 1950 ගණන් වල 60 ගණන් වල වගේ විශාල වශයෙන් බබාලා ඉපදුනා. ඒතකොට මේ කාලෙදී ගොඩක් ඒ කට්ටිය බබාලා ගොඩක් ඉපදුණු කාලයක් තමයි 1940 50 60 ගණන් කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒතකොට ඒ කාලෙදී ඉපදිච්ච කට්ටිය දැන් මොකද වෙන්නේ? දැන් මේ වෙනකොට වයසයි. ඒතර නමුත් ඊට පස්ව අවුරුදු වල ඒ විදිහට බබාලා ඉපදුනේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ ඒක සාමාන්‍යකරණය වුණා. නමුත් අර immediately after the World War situation, there was a huge birth rate. Birth rate එක ගොඩ වැඩි වුණා. But what happened now is those baby boomers are now getting old. දැන් ඒගොල්ලෝ අවුරුදු 65 70 ඒ කාලෙට තමයි දැන් ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නේ. Now we have a high amount of aging population. නැත්නම් වයස්ගත ජනගහනය දැන් වැඩි because of that problem. Now what happens is now in all those sectors of employment, we can see more elderly people than youngsters. When you take the statistics, you can see that population pyramids keep a karagana balana. අපි කියන්නේ economically active population එකක් කියලා කියනවනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ ආර්ථිකව සක්‍රිය population එක තමයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අවුරුදු 25 ඉඳලා 55 වෙනකන් තමයි අපි කියන්නේ economically active. කියන්නේ they can earn. ආර්ථිකයට contribute කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලන්ට සාපේක්ෂව අර වයස්ගත ජනගහනය වැඩි වෙනවා. එතකොට what happens is we cannot really find workers for our plantation sector to work. Because of such problems, when companies are having more old workers, they will have to give so many benefits. Then අපි හිතන්න අපි වැඩ කරන තැනක අපි වැඩිපුර සේවකයෝ පිරිසක් අවුරුදු 45ට 50ට වඩා වැඩි නම් we will have to give them lots of retirement plans. We will have to give them healthcare facilities. Likewise, we have to think of those aspects as well. We have to give them better living facilities. ඒ වගේ those are also some of the problems that the plantation sector is facing, aging population. And also, we also know that the mindset of the plantation workers is again problematic because of the social stigma. අපි කියන ඒගොල්ලෝ ටිකක් සමාජයේ ලොකු පිළිගැනීමක් නැති කට්ටියක් නිසා දැන් ඉස්සර නම් අපි කියන්නේ ලයින් හවුසස් වල ජීවත් වෙන්නේ ලොකු අධ්‍යාපනයක් නැහැ, නිතරම ඇල්කොහොල් පාවිච්චි කරන ඒ වගේ පිරිසක් විදිහටනේ ඔය තේ වතු වල එහෙම ජීවත් වුනේ. එතකොට දැන් නම් ඊට වඩා ගොඩක් වෙනස් තත්ත්වේ. නමුත් අර ඒ තියෙන සමාජයේ පිළිගැනීමක් නැතිකම වගේ issues නිසා මිනිස්සු තවදුරටත් කැමති නැහැ state sector එකේ වැඩ කරන්න. So those are also issues faced by the state sector and the policy is there to find solutions for these. Land use policy. And again, we told this one also, when you are in the agriculture, especially in the plantation sector again, you are using lots of fertilizer, you are using lots of land, and the land pollution is also always there. So adopting proper land use practices is essential, and the policy is there to maintain the sustainability of land use while improving the productivity. Right? Productivity නැත්නම් production එක වැඩි කරනවා වගේම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම land use කියන එකත් බලා ගන්නට ඕනේ. Targeted incentive and subsidy policies. Absence of a well-designed assistance scheme for planting, replanting, or new planting. Now, especially for this is again for small holders, small-scale farmers. Lack of subsidy policies, especially when they want to replant, when they want to establish a new planting, because this is initial capital cost of a plantation is very high. දැන් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් chili hari, tomato hari crop එකක් establish කරනවා වගේ නෙමෙයි tea establish කරනවා කියන්නේ. නේද? අපි ගිහිල්ලා හොරලි පැත්තේ මිනිස්සු ගෝවා ලීක්ස් වගේ දේවල් වවනවානේ ලේසි කියනවා නෙමෙයි. නමුත් ඒ වගේ දෙයක් වවනවා වගේ නෙමෙයි. tea plantation එකක්, rubber plantation එකක්, coconut plantation එකක් establish කරනවා කියන්නේ that is very expensive. Capital need එක ගොඩක් වැඩි. Right? Therefore, we need to give them some subsidies for replanting, new planting, diversification and integration. So there has to be an incentive policy. Some loans, අර මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ කප්පුක වගේ loans දෙන්නේ ඒක. හරි ඒ වගේ fertilizer subsidies are needed, especially for the plantation sector because their initial cost is very high. Establishing a coconut plantation.
Excuse me, ma'am, what is the subsidies?
Subsidy in the sense like giving interest-free loan. I mean, fertilizer subsidy can subsidy. I don't know what is exactly in Sinhalese, but yes. Now, when the price then is urea සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙළඳ පොලේ යූරියා කිලෝ 50ක බෑග් එකක් රුපියල් 1500ක් විතර එනකොට නමුත් ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකෙන් ඒක ෆාමර්ට දෙන්නේ රුපියල් 350ක් විතර. ඒතර ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකෙන් අර ඉතුරු කොස්ට් එක ඒගොල්ලෝ බෙයා කරගන්නවා. ඒ වගේ that is a subsidy, fertilizer සහනාධාර. So that is some kind of a subsidy, fertilizer subsidy කියලා කියන්නේ ඒකයි. එතකොට even though the actual price of the fertilizer is very high, say about 2000, but the farmers are getting it for 500 rupees. That means the rest of the cost is borne by the government in order to encourage the farmers for the cultivation. That is what is meant by Kora Sahanadar. Good, thank you. Kora Sahanadar දෙන්න පුළුවන්. තව ඊට වඩා අමතරව ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපි for agriculturists and farmers and the plantation sector there are low interest loans are there. Right? අනිත් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි ණයක් ගන්නවට වඩා අඩු පොලි අනුපාතික යටතේ කෘෂිකාර්මික ණය ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒවත් low interest loans දෙනවා to encourage the farmers. දැන් මම අර කලින් කිව්ව කප්පුක program එකේ එහෙම ඒ වගේ loan program එකක් specially designed for the coconut farmers. ඒ වගේම tea වලටත් තියෙනවට නම මතක නැහැ. for tea, pea paddy ඒ වගේ farmers ලාට specially designed loan assistance programs තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මතක නම් පහුගිය කාලේ මම දන්නේ නැහැ කෙනෙක් ලෝන් හම්බුනාද කියලා එන්ටර්ප්‍රයිස් ශ්‍රී ලංකා කියලා එහෙම ලෝන් සිස්ටම් එකක් ආවා. ඒක ආවෙ නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මම බිස්නස් කරන අයට. නමුත් ඒ වගේ රජයෙන් යම් අවස්ථාවන් වලදී එක එක ණය සහන ආධාර ක්‍රම ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කරලා දෙනවා so that our farmers get the benefit of those things. ඒ කියන්නේ especially plantation sector එකේ මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ It is very expensive to establish a plantation. Maintenance කියන එක චුට්ටක් ටිකක් establish කරගත්තට පස්සේ okay because coconut එහෙම දෙයක් කරන්න නැහැ coconut වලට කියන්නේ ඒකනේ lazy man's club කියලානේ coconut වලට කියන්නේ. ඒ මොකද coconut plantation එක establish කරාට පස්සේ ගිහිල්ලා අවුරුද්දකට සැරයක් විතර පූර දාලා එනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඉතින් සැරින් සැරේ කියලා පොල් ටික කඩාගෙන එන්න විතරයි ඉතින් ලොකුට කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. tea නම් එහෙම නැහැ. tea that's different story but coconut වගේව it's after establishing it is not a big deal. Right? But for the establishment it's expensive. Development oriented plantation management policies. And again, management of the plantations. So there are mechanisms that have been introduced by the government or by the plantation NPIP, the plantation policy, to facilitate the investments in the sector as well as the management aspect, to facilitate the governance and the management of the sector. Right? Management fee, regional plantation companies management management fee. Likewise, there are different support are given in terms of the management of the plantation industry. Lastly, the investment policy. And then this is again done to encourage the investments in the plantation sector, because now people are somehow getting away from the plantation sector. To avoid that, there are different incentives, different promotions to promote the investments in the plantation sector. Okay, so to attract global and regional capital and technology. So there are different mechanisms are being adopted to attract investors globally as well as locally. So those are the main 8 policy items we can find in the national policy for plantation industries. And then different policy mixtures are for specific plantation. The main policy mixtures these are again, if you can go through the plantation sector policy, policy document upload you can see that all those 8 policies are again repeated for each and every sector. Explain how these policies are applicable for these sectors. But we don't see much differences for tea, rubber, sugar, cashew, palmyra. මේවට ඇත්තටම දාලා තියෙන නමුත් ලොකු වෙනස්කම් දකින්න නැහැ. ඒකයි මම අර in general කතා කරේ මේ ඔක්කොටම අදාළ වෙන විදිහට. But if you take the policy document, you will see tea subsector එකට අදාළ policies කොහොමද, rubber subsector එකට අදාළ policies කොහොමද, sugar subsector එකට අදාළ policies කොහොමද කියලා separately කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. You will see that also. But we don't see many differences, right? ඔය ටික මම කතා කරේ common in general කතා කරේ in relation to all the plantation crops. Now, as the last section of the course content, we have to discuss issues, challenges, and opportunities in the plantation subsector. Okay. Now, we have discussed about the agricultural policy. We have discussed about the plantation sector policy, and now we are going to talk about the issues, challenges, and opportunities that can be found in the plantation subsectors. Right. Now, we are mainly going to discuss the tea subsector issues and the challenges here, and we can say that more or less these things are also applicable to the other sector as well. Right. So the first one is weak strategic R&D and extension programs. So even though there are dedicated research institutions, TRI, Tea Research Institute, it's established in Talawakele, and there are so many other related institutions as well. But still, there are no extension programs. Now, what is extension? What is the agriculture extension? Whatever the research activities that has been done in research institutions and universities and other places, the outputs or the findings of these researchers has to be communicated to the farmer. අපි research කරලා හොයා ගන්නවා right. මෙන්න මේ tea variety එක තමයි මෙන්න මේ planting material එක තමයි වැඩිපුරම yield එකක් දෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් මෙන්න මේක tea වල ඉන්න pest වලට resistant. Oh, this is good for the droughts. Likewise, we are finding new planting material, new ways of planting, spacing, or marketing. We are finding so many new things through researchers, but these things, the way that these things are being communicated to the farmer is questionable. ගොඩක් අලුත් දේවල් හොයාගත්තට මේ දේවල් වල knowledge එක farmer ට යනවා හරි අඩුයි. ඒකින්ද we don't have a very established extension system. අපි research publications, journals වල කළාට farmers are not going to read the journals. So the things has to be go either on the TV, දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ දකින්න ඔය TV programs තියෙන්නේ මොනවාද? අරුණල්ල ඊළඟට එක එක තියෙනවා නේද කෘෂිකාර්මික අත්වල අනම්මනම් කියලා TV programs තියෙනවා. ඇයි? Those are ways of doing extensions. ගොඩක් ඒවා කරන Department of Agriculture එකෙන් කරනවා. ගොවි බිමට අරුණල්ල වගේ කියලා programs තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ දකින්න TV එකේ. Those are extension programs. Those are the ways of communicating their research findings to the general farmers. But in the tea sector, we don't have such systems. Therefore, researchers are being done, but those things are not properly communicated to the farmers. Increase aging workforce and the out-migration. Yes, we discussed this one. People are not willing to work as estate workers anymore. They want to go out of the sector and find some better jobs in the market. And non-adoption of proper land use practices. Again, even though the researchers have highlighted that, okay, this is how you should plow the land, this is how you should prepare the land and all that, people are not using those proper techniques. Right. So insufficient financial capital, as I said earlier, for the regional plantation companies as well as smallholders, lack of finance is an issue. Land productivity, the decline in land productivity, low investment in factory modernization. So technology, lack of technology is also an issue. We don't have finance to purchase modern technology. That is why, because mainly we cannot compete in the foreign markets, right? Low level of quality certification in the tea factories. So you know that when you are producing tea, especially when you are exporting, you have to follow the internationally accepted quality certificate like ISO 22000, HACCP, even the fair trade certification, organic tea. Likewise, there are lots of quality certifications are there. If you cannot adhere to those quality standards, then people will not buy your tea. That's what happens to our sector. Right? අපිට ඒ quality standards වලට maintain කරන්න හරි අමාරුයි. But in contrast, countries like China, Russia, ඒගොල්ලෝ මොකද කරන්නේ? They are having as much as good quality tea. ඒකින්ද අපි අපේ සිලෝන් tea කියලා කොච්චර ලොකුවට මේවා කරගෙන හිටියත්, if you cannot follow the certifications, then your tea won't be accepted in international market, right? So I'm not going to explain all those things. Lack of crop diversification. You see this one, reducing market share in the traditional Middle Eastern market for the Sri Lankan tea. That is what happening, right? අපේ ලංකාවේ quality wise තමයි අතන quantity wise නෙමෙයි. අපේ tea quality wise තමයි අපි කියන්නේ Ceylon tea එක ඇවිල්ලා brand එකක් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So quality wise we are sharing premium quality tea with the world market. But we used to sell lots of tea to the Middle Eastern market, but now the China and Russia and other countries are India, and they are trying to grab the market because we do not keep up with the quality as well as the quantity. Right? So that's another issue. Blending, mixing low quality tea with pure Sri Lankan tea. That's again a problem because we cannot maintain the proper quality tea. Now, those are the issues. Now, these are the challenges and opportunities. However, still, because of our high quality tea, we still have good opportunities. There are still good consumers for us. And also, tea is now very diversified. Now, even though we drink always black tea, අපි තමයි මේ black tea මෙච්චර පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. But when you go to other countries, you see that people drink different kinds of tea. And not only green tea, but there are lots of other herbal and natural tea products, different flavors, different aromas, instant teas, packet teas, iced teas, decaffeinated tea. Likewise, there are lots of other ways of producing tea. දැන් අපි දන්නේ ඉතින් හැම වෙලාවකම දන්නේ black tea එකක් හදාගන්න එක විතරයි. නමුත් there are lots of other tea blends with different flavors, aromas, different medicinal properties, anti carcinogenic properties. ඒ වගේ ගොඩක් දේවල් දාලා එක එක විදිහට ටී හදන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කියන්නේ හරි broad market එකක් ටී කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒක නිසා
Ma'am, what is the කසකසා?
කසකසා මොකක්ද දරුවෝ ඒක?
පාණය තියෙන්නේ.
කසකසා කියන රැට වර්ගයක් තියෙන මොකක්ද ඒකට ඒක ඇවිල්ලා weight loss impact එකක් තියෙනවා මම දන්නේ කසකසා කියන එකට. ඒ යට જાතියේ පොඩි අර ඔය සරුවත් වලට එහෙම දාලා දෙන්න කළු පාට සීඩ් එකක් තියෙන්නේ. මම දන්නේ chia seeds වෙන්න ඕනේ මම දන්නේ ඉංග්‍රීසි වලින් කියන්නේ ඒකට. That is also it has some weight loss properties. I think it has some antioxidant properties. That is again, I don't know whether you can drink it as a තේ වෙනුවට බොන්න පුළුවන් දෙයක් කියලා මම හිතන්නේ නැහැ. You can just add it to the water and drink it, and it has some antioxidant properties and weight loss properties. I think that is why it is getting famous these days because of the weight loss properties. I don't know whether it is true. ඒවා ඇත්තද නැත්නම් scientifically proven ද කියන්න නම් දන්නේ නැහැ. Anyway, so those are, I mean, people are getting දැන් කසකසා විතරක් නෙමෙයි අත්‍තරම දැන් අපේ රටේ උනන් ගත්තාම we are now going towards other natural tea blends. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගොරක පානය කියලා තියෙනවා. ඊගාවට aloe vera drinks තියෙනවා. ඊළඟට ඔය මොනවාද soursop කොළ මොනවාද ඒ කියන්නේ කටු අනෝදා කොළ තේ විදිහට හදලා බොන්න ඒවා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේ now people are going for lots of organic as well as medicinal properties.
Custard apple.
Custard apple is මොනවාද වැලි අනෝදා මේක ඇවිල්ලා soursop කියලා කියන්නේ කටු අනෝදා. කටු අනෝදා වල තමයි වැඩිපුරම කියන්නේ anti oxidants and anti carcinogenic වදපිලිකා වලට හොඳයි දැන් පද්දෙන් එහෙම කියන්නේ. ඉතින් those things are also competing with tea. right? ඒතකොට ඒවා දැන් අපේ රටේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි අනිත් රටවලට උනත් ගියාම people are having lots of alternative products to the tea. ඒ වගේම coffee ගත්තාම උනත් ඒ වගේ දැන් coffee කියන්නේ අපේ රටේ තමයි අපි තේ බොන්නේ. අතරම when you go to other countries you see that people rarely drink in tea actually. tea නෙමෙයි major drink එක ගොඩක් Middle East වල වෙනස්. නමුත් European රටවල coffee is their favorite. Tea is actually second.
Caffeine. Tannin and caffeine.
Yes. So that's another way. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා tea market එකේ survive වෙන එක has become an issue for the Sri Lankan tea. But again, since there are lots of opportunities because of the high quality premium tea, we can do lots of other things by diversification, by adding so much value. Flavors ඒ වගේ වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්කම් තියෙනවා. දැන් Chinese tea ගත්තාම they are producing lots of varieties of tea. අර තේ එකට දැම්මම ලස්සනට මලක් වගේ පිපෙන ඒවා තියෙනවා. එක එක හැඩයට හැදෙන ඒවා තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි නම් තේ කුඩු ටික දැම්මම ඒක තේ කුඩු එච්චරයි. But there are green tea, silver tips, golden tips. Likewise, there are lots of ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ මට වඩා tea ගැන මම දන්නේ මේගොල්ලෝ මේනකොට ඉගෙන ගන්න නැතන I am not a tea person. But what I can say is the potential of the Sri Lankan tea market in the global market for Sri Lankan tea, right? Because quality wise, yes, we are in the top place, but quantity wise, we are not there.
මම මේ ටී කොෆී වලින් මේ ඇඟට යකඩ උරා ගන්න එක අඩු වෙනව නේද?
Oh, it's true. That is why it is advised to not to drink tea or coffee before or after half an hour of a meal. කෑමට පැය භාගයකට හෝ කලින් හෝ පසුව ගන්න එපා කියලා කියන්නේ that is true. The caffeine has an effect on the absorption of iron of the food consumed. That is true. Yeah. So the modernization, because we are not using much of technology now, we are still relying on hand picking of tea. Now I know that some plantation companies have introduced other ways of picking tea. දැන් අපි තාමත් ඇඟිලි දෙකෙන් තමයි තේදළු නෙලන ඒ සිස්ටම් එක. But that is one of the secrets of producing high quality tea. එහෙම එකකුත් තියෙන අපි hand pick කරන නිසා තමයි අපේ tea වලට quality එක හොඳටම හොඳ. But there are some other, if you want to produce in high quantity, then the mechanization is also an option. Mechanize කරන එකත් option එකක්. දැන් අනිත් රටවල් වල නම් අත්‍තරම there are robots. Again, robot කියන්නේ බෝල ඇවිල්ලා pick කරනවා නෙමෙයි, but there are machines to pick even fruits. Pick කරන්න machines තියෙනවා. tea වලටත් එහෙමයි, tea plucking වලට there are machines that can cut the tea cup of the tea branch at a certain length. The length එකකින් කපන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට. එතකොට tea එක පැත්තක්ම එක ක්ෂණිකයෙන් harvest කරගන්න පුළුවන් විදිහේ machines තියෙනවා. Robots are there. I think ඒ වගේ mechanizations වගේ දේවල් වලින් පුළුවන් ඉතින් අපිට quantity එක වැඩි කරගන්න. නමුත් අපේ Ceylon tea වල premium quality එක රැඳිලා තියෙන ඇත්තටම ගත්තොත් ඔය අපි අර ඇඟිල්ලෙන් තාම ඇඟිලි තුඩු වලින්ම harvest කරන නිසා අපි ඒකට හොඳට leaf එක බලලා තමයි harvest කරන්නේ. We exactly know what to harvest. Right. Now, when it comes to issues of the rubber subsector, the issues are actually same as the tea sector, especially the workforce issues. Rubber වලත් out migration කියන concern එක හරියට තන, because rubber is again rubber tapping. අපි කියන්නේ කිරි කපනවා කියලා. That is a very physically demanding and a very difficult job. You have to carry the latex down the hills and carry it again, and you have to go and bend at every tree and collect the latex, and that is again physically very difficult, and because of that people are not willing to do these things, right? හරිම අමාරු අපහසු job එකක් rubber තේදළු කඩනවා වගේම rubber කිරි කපනවා කියන එක. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා අපි ඒගොල්ලෝ මිනිස්සුන්ට කතා කරලා තියෙන අතන රිසර්ච් කරනකොට කතා කරාම කියන්නේ ඉතින් අපේ ළමයි නම් ඉතින් මේ රස්සාව කරගෙන ඉන්නවට අපේ කැමැත්තක් නැහැ කියලා. ඒක තමයි ඇත්ත කතන්දරේ. ඉතින් because of that labor issues are very critical in both private and both tea and rubber sectors, and most of the time we see that then small holders ලා ගැන ඇත්තටම ගොඩක් වෙලාවට කරන්නේ ඉඩමේ අයිති කෙනාම තමයි ගිහිල්ලා ඔය තේදොළ නෙලේව කරන්නේ රබර් කිරි කපන ඒවා කරන්නේ unless it is a bigger then cool down වල නෙමෙයි නමුත් පොඩි ඔය අක්කරේ විතර තියෙන ඉඩම් වල මිනිස්සු හොයාගන්න නෑ වැඩ කරන්නේ. ඉතින් අයිති මිනිස්සයාට ඒක අතහැරලා දාලා නිකන් ඉන්න බැරි නිසා ඒ මිනිස්සයා ගිහිල්ලා තේදොළ නෙලනවා රබර් කිරි කපනවා ඒවා කරන්නේ අන්තිමට ෆාමම තමයි. දැන් අර it is very difficult to find rubber tappers as well as ඒ වගේම rubber tapping කියලා කියන්නේ tea plucking කියන්නේ එක skill එකක්. tea plucking වගේම ඊටත් වඩා rubber tapping කියන rubber වලට ගන්නලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ එතකොට rubber tapping it has
මේ rubber කිරි කපනකොට වල්ක කැම්බියම කැපිලාද කිරියන්නේ?
මම එච්චර ෆිසියොලොජි නම් දන්නේ නැහැ පුතා මම රබර් එක්ස්පර්ට් කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි මම ඇවිල්ලා economics and marketing aspects එක කරන කෙනෙක් but yes there is a certain depth that you have to cut ඒ වගේම angle එකක් තියෙනවා 45 degree angle එකෙන් රබර් ලෙසන් එකක් කරලා නැද්ද රබර් මේකට තාම ගන්නව නැද්ද ඔයගොල්ලන්ට
No ma'am.
Okay, I think it will be right ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගන්නාවි මම එච්චර ලොකුවට plantation ගැන දන්නේ නැහැ but I know the issues that are there right because it is a skill and කපන්න ඕන depth එකක් තියෙනවා ඕනට වඩා යටට කැපිලත් බෑ ඕන අඩුවෙන් කැපිලත් බෑ ඒ වගේ මේක කැපෙන්න නම් අර angle එකක් තියෙනවා ඒකට තමයි කිරි ටික ලස්සනට ගලාගෙන එන්නේ නැත්නම් plant එකට හානි වෙන්න පුළුවන් ඒ වගේ නැත්නම් කිරි එක් තැන එකතු වෙලා කැටි ගහන්න පුළුවන් likewise there are lots of issues cutting tapping rubber ඉතින් ඒක නිසා because of these things the workforce is getting very limited And also there are lots of alternative products. Rubber, then plastic with the present. There are certain products that you cannot replace the rubber, but in certain situations now, plastic and other synthetic items,
Artificial rubber.
artificial rubber things are there that replaces the natural rubber. Now, because of that, there are demand issues in the international market, right? Synthetic products are there, therefore there are issues in the world market in terms of the demand for the natural rubber. I think rubber prices is highly fluctuating. Again, the fuel crisis, energy issues are again very impactful on the rubber market. Transportation, machine operating, we have a data energy on fuel on. I think with the prices of those things, again, the rubber industry is at a trouble. Right?
Isoprene rubber.
As I told you, I'm not very aware of the psychological and the chemical properties of rubber, but we are just discussing here about the marketing and policy related aspects. Right. So anyway, as I was saying, since there are lots of alternatives of rubber for the natural rubber like synthetic and artificial rubbers and plastic and things like that, there are issues in the rubber market. So that is another thing. And also the rubber production of the country again is served to the Sri Lankan market as something. Rubber 70% of the total rubber production is locally consumed by the value-added industries. So we are exporting actually very limited amount of rubber. 30% විතරයි අපි export කරන්නේ ලංකාවේ. 70ක් මාත්‍රම locally consume කරනවා. ඇත්තට මේ කියන්නේ අපේ ලංකාවේ අපේ rubber නිෂ්පාදනය හරි අඩු වෙනවා. when you rubber තමයි අපි කියන්නේ කළුතර නීගිරිය වගේ area එකෙන් rubber වලට popular areas and rubber වැඩිපුරම වැවෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ කළුතර පැත්තේ. ඒක ආරාරා එකේ තියෙන්නේ කළුතරනේ අතුගම. Namuth, when you go down that area, you can see that most of the rubber plantations are getting replaced by oil palm. මම හිතනවා ඒගොල්ලෝ ඔලේ පැත්තේ කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා නම් දකින්න මැති ඇත්තටම. ඒ වගේම teeth ටික ටික වැඩි වෙනවා. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට rubber industry is the rubber land is getting replaced by the crops. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒවා ගොඩක් වෙලාවට වෙන ඉදම් වෙන්දේසි කරලා විකුණනවා. ඒ වගේ දේවල් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒවත් ලංකාවේ rubber industry එකට challenges විදිහට අපිට identify කරගන්නට පුළුවන්. Right. So lastly, we are going to talk about sugarcane subsector. Now, sugarcane is not a very popular industry, and even we didn't produce sugar for a longer time for the Sri Lankan consumption. But still, we can see some sugarcane plantation. Like if you go towards Monaragala, Uttala, that particular area, you may be able to see some sugarcane plantation. Sugarcane plantations. Again, the same problems of the tea and rubber sectors can be visible with the labor. Labor issue is again very common. There is no proper institutional arrangement for the development of the sugar industry in Sri Lanka. Then tea, rubber, coconut gattahama ඒවා නම් ඇත්තටම ටිකක් institutionalized. People are giving much of attention to those sectors. But when it comes to sugarcane, it is slightly neglected actually. Sorry, dear.
Business institute.
Oh, ඒ පැත්තේ තමයි දැන් ඔය මේ එහෙම බුත්තල එහෙමනේ තියෙන්නේ මේ පළවත් sugar scene කම්හල එහෙම. නමුත් දැන් මම දන්නේ දැන් ටිකක් මේක in operation ද නැද්ද කියලා. Now this government, I think they have again restarted the operations. I don't know whether they are continuing, but for a longer time we stopped producing sugar within the country. I think ඒ පැතිවල තියෙනවා. නමුත් still that is much of a neglected. Even though we have a research institution, the dedicated research institution එකකුත් තියෙනවා sugarcane වලට. I suppose it is in Palavat also. But again, the attention paid to the sector is very limited in comparison to the other three main crops. ඒ වගේමයි දැන් ගත්තාම ඇත්තටම oil palm industry එක ටිකක් මේ overcome කරගෙන ටිකක් ඉස්සරහට එන්න පුළුවන් ඉදිරියේදී දැන් countries like Malaysia, they are very successful in palm oil production. They are earning lots of money now. When people see that, there is a tendency of palm oil getting more attention than these crops like sugarcane. Right, so that's all. I don't want to repeat all these things. Just you can just read just some information on the sugarcane sector. මොකද මම slides ටික දාලා ඒකම කියවන එක තේරුමක් නැහැ ඔයාලට. You can always read the slides. So I will upload these things to the LMS. So I just wanted to highlight the main issues and the challenges faced by this sector, especially the plantation crops. And I will upload these two policy documents to the LMS as well, so that you can read. You can agriculture policy document එක නම් අතරම ඊට වඩා ලොකු විස්තර නැහැ. නමුත් when you take the national policy for plantation industries, there are a lot more other information that actually I took only very few and in very general. ඒ කියන්නේ මම අතරම ඔයාලට මෙතනදී කතා කරේ හැම crop එකකටම generally කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල්. නමුත් when you look at the policy itself, it talks a lot about different crops separately. Tea වලට වෙනම, rubber වලට වෙනම, palm oil වලට වෙනම එහෙම කතා කරනවා. Therefore, I will upload that so that you can get a good idea about the plantation sector and the policy. Right, so that is all. Anything else that you want to ask? Any questions? I'm sorry that I had to start this on midday. I had another meeting to attend in the morning. That is why I had to start this one at 1 p.m. I know this is a very difficult time, the boring time to discuss such a subject. But yeah, but I somehow covered the content, but I wanted to give some more time for your work. Group work එකට මීට වඩා වෙලාවක් දීලා තිබ්බනම් තමයි හොඳ. But unfortunately, I did not allocate lots of time for that one because I know that you want to finish up the content rather than spending time. I will upload those documents to the LMS. ඒ ටිකත් මම දාන්නම් හෙට class එක ඉවරනාට පස්සේ මම ඔක්කොම ටික LMS upload කරන්න. So by tomorrow evening, all the material will be on the LMS. Right, so that will be all. Thank you guys for joining, and I hope that you will enjoy your journey in DAPM in the next couple of months as well. Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Stopped.